Welcome to the Stock Network's ASX Gems Investment Conference with a healthcare spotlight. At TSN, our mission is to connect investors with fresh stock education and deliver digital investor access that empowers investment decisions. There are lots of reasons to be excited about biotech and medtech companies on the ASX. Just last month, Eli Lilly became the first healthcare company to reach $1 trillion in valuation. The Nasdaq Biotech Index is the highest performing index over the last 6 months, up 36%. And since September, multiple big acquisitions have landed in the biotech space. Among them, Pfizer buying Metsera for $10.5 billion US, Merck acquiring Cidara Therapeutics for $9.2 billion, and Novartis acquiring Avidity Biosciences for $10 billion. And in the medtech space, we've seen Abbott's $21 billion acquisition of Exact Science for its diagnostics and cancer screening product, GE Healthcare's $2.3 billion acquisition of Intelerad for its AI medical imaging management software. And Australia really is one of the best places in the world to be developing these new technologies. We've had great research out of our universities, and the R&D tax rebate means that for every $1 that a company spends to develop their technology, they get around 45 cents back. Today, we'll be cutting through the noise to hear from the experts, thought leaders, and ASX-listed companies building Australia's next big healthcare breakthrough. This is your time to sit back, tune in, and take notes, because investing is all about being informed, prepared, and positioned. Welcome to the Stock Network's ASX Gems Healthcare Spotlight. Following a year of selective recovery and capital rotation, healthcare remains a structurally defensive sector heading into 2026. Growth has been led by innovation, driving sub-segments including diagnostics, medical technology, imaging, biotech, and digital care enablement. I'm joined today by Bell Potter healthcare analyst John Hester to unpack the year's performance signals and the investment landscape forming for the year ahead. John, welcome to the Stock Network.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Now, what are the key themes and performance drivers over the last year in the healthcare sector?
Well, it's been a real mixed bag, Lil. We've seen some really stunning performances, but it's company-specific stuff. The macro environment generally hasn't been that helpful for biotechs in particular, but there are certainly some standouts. So companies that have delivered strong clinical results have generally done better. Balance sheets are important as well. So a couple of things there, but as we look forward into 2026, it promises to be a pretty exciting year.
Excellent. And into while still rather on this year, which segments do you think held their pricing power best? And where do you see really the strongest re-rating momentum heading into the new year?
Pricing power is a really broad term. In healthcare, obviously the drug companies continue to do very, very well. If you have long periods of exclusivity, then your pricing power remains. Generics we don't like. It's been a really tough session for companies like Main Pharma and others, for example. So pricing power is all about exclusivity, and the companies who have that, like Mesoblast, for example, continuing to do very well. The second part of your question related to what was it again?
The second question, heading into the new year, where do you really see that re-rating momentum?
Yeah. So re-rating momentum is going to be driven by a couple of specific things. On the macro level, certainly interest rate cuts are going to be important. We're talking about potentially the rates in Australia being stable for longer at around the current levels. In the US, situation is less clear. I really don't know which direction the next rate move is going to be. It's not for certain what that situation is going to be. So the macro environment is going to be important. If there are rate cuts, then I think valuations are going to head north. In terms of company-specific issues in relation to the healthcare sector in particular, any company that's got a good asset is going to get a re-rating based on a deal. We've seen Immutep get a nice deal earlier this week. That has certainly been positive for their stock. So any companies who can drive a deal, it's going to be great for them.
So, John, you've highlighted some catalysts for the year ahead. Which stocks are you now keeping a close eye on?
We've just come out with our key picks in the last 24 hours, and there's a couple of really exciting names on that list. So we're quite enthusiastic about Pro Medicus and Telix Pharmaceuticals, both of which have got excellent prospects and I think that are good value at current levels. In the speculative category, we like Mesoblast. It's obviously had a really good calendar year 2025 with the approval of their Ryoncil product, and we expect really rapid revenue growth over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. I also like 4D Medical, which has had a great RSNA conference last week, and also Clarity Pharmaceuticals, also in the radiopharmaceutical space. So, talking about radiopharmaceuticals a lot, it continues to be a hot space. We've got 5 or 6 listed companies in that space in Australia, so we're quite well covered there, and we're watching that space carefully.
John, I appreciate your insights and look forward to watching this sector in the year ahead.
You're welcome, Lel. Anytime.
Hi there, and thank you so much for tuning in to hear about 4D Medical. And, we really are in such an exciting state and stage at the moment. Before I do that, let's just take a quick look at the legals. And then I'll start with an introduction as to really who 4D Medical are. We started in 2013, and we take basically CAT scan images, CT images of your heart and lungs and add tremendous value to those images. That sits across both structural and functional imaging, covered by over 100 patents. Now we have, with our 3rd generation functional imaging technology, CTVQ, we now have 9 FDA cleared devices. We're 130 people, where we have the majority of our people in Australia. However, the majority of our customers are in the US, and that, of course, does require some people to cover that US market. As I said, we have this big portfolio of products. Our pulmonary function products are our flagship products, and you see there are Gen 1, 2, and 3, where with CTVQ being the product that's generated the most interest over the last few months. However, they're not alone. They are wrapped up very importantly by our pulmonary structure and our cardiac products. And one of the things that we've learned over the last few years, progressing through from XV-LVAS, CT-LVAS now to CTVQ, is that by having a broad offering, by not just having the steak, if you like, but by having the sides that go with that, really gives doctors the maximum opportunity to enjoy our products. For them, there's a significant point of friction in having other contracts and having other IT connections. And by offering that full service offering so that we can give them every piece of information, every bit of healthcare advice possible from that one CT scan, really maximizes the value proposition between us and those hospital centers. But really, all the fuss nowadays is focused on CTVQ. The doctors are incredibly excited by that CTVQ opportunity, and we take a routine CT, a routine image like the one that's there on the left, and with software only, we're able to give images of the ventilation and perfusion. And this is to displace really existing technologies that sit today of giving images of the heart and lungs, images of the lungs that also show the blood flow. And right now there's 2 of those, a CT angiogram or a CT with contrast, and additionally a nuclear VQ scan. And with the latter of those 2, the nuclear VQ being the thing that we're looking to displace most immediately. That's the center of the bullseye for us. Now, that scan is typically delivered for folks who are undergoing some kind of procedure, going to have a surgery, something removed from your lungs, or something to treat, for example, emphysema. And before you do that, you need to have these pictures of the airflow and the blood flow so the surgeon knows how to do that procedure. They start with the CT, they do the rest of their workup, they then send you off to nuclear medicine to inhale radioactive material, then get a radioactive image, and then in fact, I'll step through. So you see here that CT I said. You then inhale the radioactive material and get that ventilation image labeled there with V on this slide. You then injected with radioactive contrast material and then imaged one more time to get that Q image. So those are the images there. The data goes back to the surgeon. The surgeon can then schedule you in for your procedure. Now, what we offer the surgeon and the patient instead is, back at the beginning when you had that first CT scan, we can then simply apply our software to that CT. You don't have to go to a second place to get a second imaging procedure. You don't have to inhale radioactive material. You don't have to have radioactive material injected into your body. We can do all of that as a software layer. Also, I think, as you can see, the images look significantly clearer. That's great for the doctor. It's great for the patient because they don't have that radioactive material put inside their body. But really, the key driver, the key thing that will be driving VQ to significant success over the next few years is that the surgeon doesn't have to send you off to somewhere else. They don't lose control of their patient, and they don't lose control of that revenue that comes through as a result of that procedure. They keep you right there the whole time. It happens much more quickly. And that's better, not just for you as a patient, for them as a doctor, but it's also better for the business of that healthcare procedure. And by us adding value to that business, that really drives, it's the key decision driver to lead doctors to want to change to using our technology. So right now we're looking and excited to replace those two procedures, and in particular the nuclear VQ procedure. And we have a significant technological advantage there in that we are the first and only technology that does not require the use of an injection. It's a really large addressable market. There's 1 million VQ scans done annually in the United States. So that's with an average payable of $1,150 per scan. So it's 1.1 billion US. Globally, that's a $2.6 billion global opportunity. And additionally, we are confident that by replacing the logistically complex scan with one that's much simpler, one that's more convenient for everybody involved, will drive long-term growth in demand for those VQ scans. And additionally, there are 10 times as many CT scanners in the US as there are VQ scanners, and the procedures take 1/4 of the time or less on a CT scanner than they do. So there's something like 40,000 times greater availability of CT VQ than there is nuclear VQ in the US. So we have this million scan per year opportunity, $1 billion opportunity. And we have a very rare circumstance that's been put together through the design of CTVQ, both technologically and where 4DMedical and CTVQ are positioned in the marketplace. And that is that all of these 5 key drivers for a decision to happen in healthcare point in the same direction. So it's better for the patient, improved patient comfort, shorter scan times, better access to the equipment, less invasive, so no radioactive material involved or included. It's better for the referring doctor, for that surgeon, right? It's uses the CT that they ordered anyway. It gives them confidence in scheduling because you don't have to get sent somewhere else, and gives you crisp, clean pictures that are quantitative in nature to help them make their decisions. It's better for the imaging provider, for the radiologist, right? So simplified procedure. They don't have to look at a CT scan and then look at a nuclear scan. Improved diagnostic accuracy and the potential to enhance revenues by bringing the procedure to by bringing the revenue to the CT scan, which is much faster. 5 minutes to do a CT scan versus 45 minutes to do a nuclear image. Great for the hospital, resource optimization. greater health equity because there's, as we said, many more CT scanners across the community. And then there's also greater incumbent value. So we have slots in nuclear medicine are now available to high value procedures such as cardiac scans and theranostic procedures, which really great for patients and also bring in significant revenue. So we have this incredible confluence. It's better for the patient, better for the surgeon, better for the radiologist, better for the hospital, and uniquely and incredibly rarely better for the current incumbent that's delivering that scan today. They are happier to give the scan up and allowed to bring in higher value and higher billing procedures than the one they're doing. All of these things driving together give us the really significant confidence that we will in fact take up 100% market share and actually grow that from 1 million to more than that over time.
I'm presenting Alcidion on behalf of the Stock Network. I'll just go through a couple of slides. A little bit about Alcidion and who we are. We're a global health informatics company. We really are focused on using the data available in healthcare to support the efficient and safer delivery of healthcare across global healthcare sector. We currently support around 400 hospitals across 100 distinct clients, and our flagship product is Miya Precision. What Miya Precision does is deliver real-time data and insights at the point of care to doctors, nurses, allied health professionals, and people running healthcare organisations to provide safer delivery of care, whilst also at the same time ensuring that we do it in the most efficient way possible. There's a lot of challenges in healthcare today, as everyone is probably well aware of, in respect of the demand for our healthcare system is outstripping our ability to either provide resources and people to actually deliver healthcare, hospital beds in order to support all those patients, and of course, an aging population that is increasingly presenting with more complex conditions. So all of these challenges on the healthcare system means we need to be a lot smarter about how we deliver healthcare. And Alcidion has a very modern platform that has been designed to support clinicians to deliver healthcare care more safely and efficiently. We operate across Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom predominantly at the moment, and currently looking to enter new markets with a focus right now on Canada and the Middle East. Canada in particular has a healthcare system that really emulates what is happening in Australia and England throughout the NHS. And so we feel that's a readily adaptable market for us to move to, and very growing interest and investment in the Middle East in terms of digital healthcare. So 2 exciting markets for us to pursue. In terms of the problems that we look to solve, Alcidion and our Miya Precision platform is really helping the healthcare industry and the delivery of healthcare move from an analog or paper environment to a digital environment. Healthcare has been a little bit behind some other industries in terms of being able to move rapidly, but we have this real impetus now, post-COVID, we have less people working in the healthcare system and certainly greater demand. So we're focusing on how do we more efficiently move patients through the healthcare system. A very exciting potential that we support across a number of healthcare systems at the moment is how do we treat more people in their home, which is actually a safer and generally a happier environment for most people to be treated in, and keep the hospital environment for those that are in emergency situations or surgical situations. So that concept of hospital in the home is also emerging as an alternative model of care, and one that Alcidion is supporting. We are also seeing all of this supported by increasing investment from governments and healthcare systems in a move from paper to digital, because there's a recognition that we can't necessarily build more hospitals or support or staff those hospitals adequately or quickly enough to deal with the demands that we have. From a financial perspective, Alcidion has, over the last 18 months, really started to demonstrate leverage from the investment that we've been making in the preceding years. We invested in building the Miya Precision platform. We have, over the last 7 or 8 years, really created very excellent reference sites in both Australia and New Zealand market and the UK. And we're seeing that now translate into increasing revenue, increasing profitability. We were, £5 million profitable off 40 million revenue last year, cash flow positive. At the end of the first quarter, we continue to deliver strong market growth. First quarter is generally our slowest quarter, so we're very excited about where we are at the end of the first quarter. We are at about a minimum at this point of 36.3 million of contracted revenue. That was with 3 quarters still to go. Subsequent to this, we recently announced a very large contract expansion with one of our major flagship customers, which is the Australian Defence Force. And that extension will add significantly to that revenue recognition for this year and takes us to at least a minimum of 42 million, which will be ahead of where we were last year, with still a further 7 months of the year to go. We have a very strong cash position with over 16 million in the bank. I won't talk too much about the financials. A lot of information about our financials can be found at our website and at the ASX, where we have obviously continued to update the market on a quarterly basis, and most recently with our full year results. I talked about our flagship platform. Miya Precision is the purple line running through the middle here. We are really focused on supporting the healthcare system to improve patient flow, improve the movement of patients through the healthcare system, reduce the burden on our ambulances and emergency by getting more beds available more quickly. We support predominantly hospitals and healthcare systems, people who are treating patients at home, and also, as I touched on, have a very strong presence providing integrated care records for military environment. We have a very distinct advantage against our competitors. We are actually pretty much in a white space, so we are creating a new market. We typically are not replacing another system, but it may be the first time they have brought or purchased a platform that is about creating insights for them. And so we have a very big differentiator in terms of how we've designed our systems, very focused on making them easy to use, intuitive, and easy to train. We sell our system as a software as a service, so particularly as subscription-based, so customers pay annually in advance for the use of our software and for the cloud enablement, and they also pay us implementation fees so that we can implement and train them to use the system. We operate, our strategy is really around land and expand. Being a platform, we tend to sell the platform with the first 2 or 3 modules to our customers, and then over time we currently have 16 additional modules. We've been adding 1 to 2 a year in terms of our R&D development. And what this allows us to do is get a position with the customer and then continue to sell them additional modules over time. And I've just called out there 4 customers where we have had this opportunity to sell them their platform in the first instance, demonstrate the benefits fairly quickly, and then rather rapidly have them come back to purchase additional modules. So that land and expand capability is core to our sales or go-to-market strategy. In terms of our focus for FY26 and beyond, there's still a very significant opportunity in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, and our focus is very much on continuing to convert business in those markets. There's a lot of investment in those markets and also continuing need and demand. We're also looking at how the platform can continue to support not only hospital in the home, but the monitoring of patients in aged care so that we can prevent them from ending up in the hospital system. I touched on our interest in new geographies. I doubt that we won't move into those new geographies in this financial year, but we're just starting to make the investment now, and we'll start to see that expansion, I believe, into FY27 and beyond. We have done a number of acquisitions over the last 4 or 5 years. We've been consolidating those acquisitions for the last 18 months, but we do keep a really watchful eye on adjacencies or strategic opportunities that come to us, which might allow us to more rapidly enter a new market. At this stage, we would be really only focused on companies that are bringing us earnings accretive opportunities or opportunities to increase our market share. Where to from here? It's really continuing on the path that we've had. We've had some excellent momentum over the last 12 to 18 months. We're seeing that continue in FY26. The challenge in healthcare is only increasing, and Alcidion is really well placed to support the healthcare industry as we move into the future.
Hi, my name is Chris Burns. I'm CEO and Managing Director of Amplia Therapeutics. Thank you for joining the call today. I'm here to talk about the work Amplia Therapeutics is doing in developing its drug namafotinib in pancreatic cancer. The company is listed on the ASX under the ticker code ATX, and we're also recently uplisted on the US OTCQB market under the ticker code INNMF. A short disclaimer. So Amplia is developing a pipeline of molecules that target a protein called FAK or FAK. And in fact, our lead drug is called namafotinib, which is a best-in-class FAK inhibitor in clinical development. The drug has shown promising efficacy, durability, and tolerability in a clinical study that's currently running in both Korea and Australia, and I will show you data from that study today. We've recently begun a second study in pancreatic cancer that is running in Australia and the US. That's under the FDA scheme and Investigational New Drug, or IND. And we have Orphan Drug Designation and Fast Track Designation from the US FDA as well. The company is based in Melbourne, and we're very fortunate to have a very experienced board heading up the company. So Warwick Tong is the chair of the board. Warwick is a trained physician, many years at the pharmaceutical company GSK and with biotech companies, and he's been part of taking this drug to market known as Rezurock. Robert Peach is a scientist by training, long career in US biotech and pharmaceutical companies, and he was responsible for taking this drug to the market. Jane Bell, who is an experienced corporate and finance lawyer based here in Melbourne. She's the chair of Mesoblast and also on the board of Monash Health and other entities. And lastly, myself, my career started at Pfizer, another pharmaceutical company in the UK, and I've worked at a number of biotech companies, and I helped develop this drug called Ojjaara. And then on top of that, we have a very senior management team. So as I said, we're developing a drug in pancreatic cancer, and particularly metastatic pancreatic cancer, which is a disease where the cancer has spread to other parts of the body. As everyone knows, metastatic pancreatic cancer is a terrible diagnosis for anyone to receive, and that's because the 5-year survival is very low. It's probably lower than 3%. And that's because it's a highly aggressive disease and is often diagnosed very late when the disease has already progressed outside of the pancreas and into other organs. The mainstay of treatment in Australia is a chemotherapy combination called gemcitabine and Abraxane, or younger, fitter patients can also receive FOLFIRINOX. And these two treatments are pretty much standard around the world. The US and Europe probably favour more FOLFIRINOX than we do in Australia, but in Asia, in particular, gemcitabine and Abraxane is favoured. Both of these treatments will extend survival with a progression-free survival, so keeping the disease under control for about 5 to 6 months, and a median overall survival of somewhere between 8 to 9 months for Abraxane and around 11 months for FOLFIRINOX. The drugs are tolerated okay. I guess gemcitabine Abraxane has some side effects that are apparent over time. FOLFIRINOX is more aggressive and has got side effects from day one. And what this graph here shows is that the majority of patients either get gemcitabine Abraxane, gemcitabine, or a FOLFIRINOX-based therapy. So more than 3/4 of patients get that. So what we're doing in our trial is we're adding our drug on top of either of these therapies to improve the outcomes, to improve these numbers and give patients a longer response. Our drug, as I said, inhibits a protein called FAK. We know FAK is overexpressed in pancreatic cancer. We know that patients who have lower levels of FAK in their tumor actually do better. That's a genetic evidence, if you like, of what we're trying to do. FAK is involved in a host of processes that support tumor growth, metastasis, chemical resistance, so resistance to drug treatment. And it also is involved in creating a scar-like tissue that sits around pancreatic cancer and makes it very difficult for drugs and for your immune system to penetrate and attack the cancer. So we have what we like to say is a 1-2 punch, an effect on the cancer cells itself and an effect on the microenvironment by inhibiting just this one protein, FAK. And that's a little cartoon to show you what happens. So if you can see, this is a tumor cells before, surrounded by this sort of immune suppressed fibrotic tissue. And when we treat it with drug, you get less tumor cells, a breakdown of this tumor tissue. Our drug, nalmeflotinib, was discovered here in Australia at a industry academic partnership called the Cancer Therapeutics CRC that involved some of the country's best medical research institutes. And we've continued to work as we developed the drug with other researchers in the country, including the Garvan Institute of Medical Research in Sydney. The drug itself is highly selective, highly potent inhibitor of FAK with excellent properties that make it a drug that is safe to use in patients. And I'll show data that supports that. So the question that we pose in this clinical study is, does nalmeflotinib improve the response to chemotherapy? And are there other opportunities to use nalmeflotinib in new therapies that are being developed? So in terms of the lead trial that we've been running called the Accent trial, which we run in Australia and Korea, here's our drug here. The drug is given as a capsule. It's given in the days preceding patients receiving their chemotherapy, and the chemotherapy itself is given intravenously. Our drug is given orally, so there's a convenience for patients. And this is data we reported a couple of months ago showing that the median progression-free survival for patients taking nalmeflotinib on top of their chemotherapy was a good 2 months clear of what we would expect if they were just taking chemotherapy alone. So 7.6 months versus 5.5 months. So that mightn't sound a lot, and obviously we are keen on any improvement for these patients. But 2 months is actually significant for patients with this aggressive form of disease. And in fact, the last drug approved in pancreatic cancer was approved on a 2-month improvement in overall survival. So we're definitely heading in the right direction in that our drug appears to be extending that time that the disease is kept closely under control in terms of progression-free survival. This is another way of looking at data. Each bar represents the best response that each patient would have received. And if you look at this sort of line, dotted line here, that's a 30% reduction in tumour size. The majority of our patients saw, 23% of patients saw a reduction in tumour size over 30%, which is a response rate of 42% actually. And if we're looking at those responses that are maintained for 2 months or more, that was a 33% response rate. In addition to that, one patient had a complete response, so loss of all tumour tissue that was apparent, or all tumour that was apparent by imaging. And a second patient was taken off study, the remaining tumour cut out and shown that not to be tumour, but rather dead tissue. So that was a pathological complete response. So of our good responders, we've had 2 complete responses. And importantly, this graph shows how well tolerated the drug is. So we're looking at a number of different side effects of the chemotherapy: neutropenia, anemia, diarrhea, peripheral neuropathy, and so on and so forth, and looking at the effects of the chemotherapy alone or the chemotherapy with our drug added to it. And what you can see that Sorry, our combination is in the light blue. The chemotherapy loan's dark blue. What you can see is that the dark blue bars are consistently higher than the light blue bars, meaning that by adding our drug to the chemotherapy, we're not making it worse. And that's really important because the chemotherapy does have some side effects. And the last thing we want is to add an additional burden to these patients. So the drug is well tolerated. And that's shown in this image here, that the drug has improved efficacy, long durability in terms of that 7.6 month PFS and indeed other measures, and it's well tolerated by patients. So we're ticking all three boxes. If we think about future opportunities for FAK inhibitors, well, we're working in pancreatic cancer down here. But if we look at the kind of cancers that FAK involvement has been shown to be present in the disease progression, you can see here breast cancer, lung cancer, melanoma, colorectal cancer, all these solid tumours that we know can be very challenging to treat, all have a signature where FAK is involved. So there's a broad opportunity. If we can show the drug works in pancreatic cancer, that we've now got these opportunities in other cancers as well. So that's very exciting. So finishing off, what's planned in the year ahead? Well, this is where we are now at the end of 2025. Looking ahead, we have mature data coming out in Q1 of 2026 from our current study. That study should complete midway through 2026, and we hope to start a registration-enabling study this time next year, where we're actually developing sufficient data to actually get approval from the regulators. That's what we plan to start next year. I haven't spoken about it, but we have the second study that I mentioned at the beginning. That's running at the moment. We've got sites open in Australia. We're about to open sites in the US, and we'll be giving updates over the next 12 to 18 months on that study as well. That's a different chemotherapy, but it's our drug added to that chemotherapy, again in pancreatic cancer patients. We've got sufficient funding to get us through into 2027 and complete all these activities. So we look forward to reporting to the market over the coming months on that data. So with that, I thank you for your attention, and please reach out to me on this email address if you have any further questions. Thank you again.
Hi, thank you for your time today. My name is Jane Shaw. I'm the Executive Chair of BCAL Diagnostics, and I'm really excited today to give you an update on where we are. BCAL is listed on the ASX. Our current share price is 10.5 cents. We've got 368 million shares on issue, and our current market capitalisation is about $38 million. So I just want to give you a summary or an overview of BCAL Diagnostics. Very exciting time for the company. We have launched our Breast Test Plus in March this year. This is a blood test that's used as another diagnostic tool that will detect breast cancer. It's very exciting. It's first for Australia. So we launched that in March this year in partnership with Sonic Healthcare. So we run those tests through various sample collection sites. Those tests go to our own proprietary laboratory in North Ryde, and then we send those results back to the doctors. It's a real game changer for early detection of breast cancer. What we announced in September this year, we announced a further partnership with ClearNote Health, a highly regarded company from the USA. They have got a proprietary test for the early detection of pancreatic and ovarian cancer. And we are really excited to announce that those tests are going to be available in January through our existing distribution networks with Sonic Healthcare throughout Australia. Again, this is another first for Australia, having the ability to provide clinicians with another diagnostic tool for the early detection of now pancreatic, ovarian, and breast cancer. So we've spent the last 15 years building our research and body of evidence. build our infrastructure and platforms, our strategic partnerships, and now we are ready to commercially launch. The breast test, it's a standard blood draw. You get the result, and those results go to your general practitioner or your specialist. ClearNote Health is a highly reputable company. Their science came out of Stanford University. It's a proprietary platform looking at epigenomics. They've been selected from 21 peers, and their science and evidence has been independently validated. And the National Cancer Institute in the US selected them for a Vanguard study, which is part of the Project Moonshot. This is a pathway for US FDA breakthrough designation. They've got a robotic CLIA lab in the US. They are distributing these tests throughout 70 countries. Their tests have been validated on over 20,000 patient samples. They are reimbursed in the US. They've got approvals and regulatory in the UK. And BCAL is really excited to announce our partnership with ClearNote Health. So basically, we will be offering the test, as I said, initially through Sydney Breast Clinic and then through the Sonic Healthcare National collection centres. Those samples will be sent to our own proprietary laboratory. Initially, we'll be sending them off to the US, but later in the year, we hope to be transferring that technology into our own laboratory in North Ryde. This basically gives us the comprehensive or a more comprehensive platform for early diagnostics in 3 cancers, pancreatic and ovarian being the silent killers. We've got a range of clinical partnerships throughout Australia and the USA. Why is early detection so important? Particularly with pancreatic. The majority of pancreatic cancers are detected in later stage where there's a 3% survival rate. If you detect those cancers earlier, your chance of survivability is at least 80%. The same with ovarian and with any other cancer. The later you detect the cancer, the poorer your outcomes and potential survivability rates. Therefore, early detection is the key. With this pancreatic test, we have a specificity of 96.9%. With the ovarian, the specificity is 93.9%. And basically, it's got commercial reimbursement from major insurers in the US. In terms of the clinical utility and where these tests are going to be utilized in the clinician's clinical practice, for pancreatic, it's going to be for new onset diabetes, particularly for individuals 50 plus. It's going to be for family history and also genetic predispositions, and also for pancreatic cysts under surveillance. With ovarian, again, it's a personal history of breast cancer. There's a strong genetic predisposition for women who've got the BRCA1 or 2 mutation, and also individuals who've had a family history of ovarian cancer. We are currently working with clinicians from the pancreatic clinical community and also from the ovarian clinicians, and we're setting up clinical frameworks to educate those clinicians and looking at the best use of these tests to improve outcomes and make them accessible for all those patients eligible for these tests. So in terms of where does the test fit at the moment, as most of you are probably aware, particularly if you're 50 plus, there's the National Bowel Cancer Screening Program for colorectal cancer. Our tests, the ovarian and pancreatic, both outperform the current colorectal test that is being used as a screening tool. So this is very exciting in terms of the evidence is so strong in terms of these two tests being used as early detection tools for ovarian and pancreatic cancer. In the future, we'll be offering a multi-cancer test. This will be later in the year. Again, this is a test that is currently available in the US, and we'll be introducing that into the Australian community in June later this year. Very, very exciting time for the early detection of cancers from a standard blood draw. So if you'd like to learn more, you can go to earlydetection.com.au. You can register your interest, and if you're appropriate, talk to your general practitioner. And yeah, we'll be launching from the 19th of January in 2026. So it's very exciting for the organisation. BCAL Diagnostics has been developing the breast test for the last 15 years, building a strong infrastructure, a strong platform in terms of clinical distribution through working through our clinicians, building a comprehensive data set in terms of verification and validation of the tests. Also working with the clinicians in developing published papers. We do have some peer-reviewed papers that you can actually review. We'll be launching in conjunction or collaboration with some of the high-risk clinics in Sydney in relation to pancreatic, ovarian and breast. We have a comprehensive healthcare practitioners network, and as I've said, we're working with Sonic Healthcare in terms of having accessibility to collect those samples. Earlydetection.com.au, our digital platform, will be there for patients to register their interest. For clinicians, there's a doctor portal on the BCAL Diagnostics website where they can access more information, more scientific evidence and the papers. Ultimately, our objective is to have these tests reimbursed through the regulatory process and Medicare reimbursement. And we've been working with the regulatory authorities. We've had some discussions with some of the MPs in relation to ways in which we can fast track this. It's a very exciting time for BCAL. I think we're on the cusp of some great developments in the early diagnosis and treatment of all these cancers, and ultimately that will improve the survivability rates and outcomes for people who unfortunately are diagnosed with cancer. So thank you for your time today. If you'd like any further information, please contact me through the BCAL Diagnostic website. And if you're a clinician, we are very capable to introduce you to some of our key opinion leaders who have been working with us to bring these tests into the market. So big thank you for your time today, and thank you for your interest in BCAL Diagnostics.
Hi, hello. My name is Henk Jan Boele. I'm the co-founder CEO of BlinkLab. And with BlinkLab, we have developed a smartphone-based platform that allows neurometric assessments in children to allow early and accurate diagnosis of autism and ADHD. A brief corporate snapshot. BlinkLab is a very young company. We listed in April 2024 at 20 cents, and about 24% of the shares are still owned by the founders and the directors. The team, in a nutshell, is trained as neuroscientists, and many of us have a very strong scientific background, and the board is in Australia. When we talk about autism, we're talking about a neurodevelopmental condition that impacts many daily life domains, including social development, language development, but also sensory motor development. The economic burden of autism in the US is increasing, and also the prevalence is increasing. We're talking about 2 to 4% of the kids that are diagnosed right now, and the healthcare expenses associated with it are also increasing. In Australia, about 41% of all NDIS participants have autism, and this makes it the most common disability in the NDIS scheme. The number of participants with autism increases every year, and so do the annual payments for autism. And this year, Australia is reaching almost 10 billion Australian dollars in autism payments. In the autism neuroscience community, which is my background, there's a consensus that early diagnosis and intervention helps children to develop crucial skills in life, and it reduces long-term medical costs and needs. That's why the Academy of Pediatrics in the US is recommending that each and every child is screened for autism at the ages of 18 and 24 months. And when you talk about this is a unique challenge because we are talking about millions of kids that are born each year in Australia, but also in Europe. And there's also health economic studies showing that early intervention is highly cost efficient. And there's also studies showing this in Australia using NDIS data. The current diagnostic pathway for autism always starts with the families concerned about a child's behavior. They go to a GP. The GP is not diagnosing. Typically, they go through a roller coaster of occupational, speech therapy, psychologists, etc. None of them is diagnosing. Finally, after a couple of years on the wait list, they go to a neuropsychologist or a psychiatrist who uses subjective instruments to diagnose autism. There's no biomarker available. That leads to late diagnosis, and late diagnosis leads to late intervention. Typically, and we've spoken with many of these families have to wait for years in order to get a diagnosis for autism. How we can change this is by empowering families and pediatricians or GPs early in the process using accessible technology, such as BlinkLab. And then only basically the necessary cases go to a neuropsychologist. This leads to early diagnosis, and we have that unique window of early and personalized intervention that focuses on speech development, social development, intellectual development, and all the other neurodevelopmental domains. But the key here is, of course, early detection of autism. And we have developed a technology that is allowing us to do so, using principles from fundamental neuroscience. And I'll explain you briefly how this technology works. So we have developed a smartphone application. It's not an app, but it's more like a computer program on the smartphone that really taps into the full functionality, the full potential of the smartphone by presenting a video to kids that typically lasts for about 10 to 15 minutes. There's no testing whatsoever. It's just watching the video. But while the child is watching the video, every now and then we surprise the child with an unexpected stimulus that is supposed to evoke what we call a facial reflex response. And these facial reflex responses include eye blinks, for instance, but also mouth openings, specific type of vocalizations, and also emotional expressions on the face. And by combining all these, what we call neurometrics, it's not biometrics, but neurometrics, we can predict now with very high sensitivity, specificity, whether the child is on the autism spectrum or is neurotypical. It is fundamental neuroscience, but now for the first time available on the smartphone. Our whole patent portfolio is built around that technology, where we generate a digital biomarker for neurodevelopmental conditions, including autism. In the end, what we are looking at reflexes like the blinks, but we are not interested in the blinks. We are, of course, interested in the brain. And we use the blinks, but all the other facial reflex responses as a proxy for brain function. We go way beyond blinks, of course. We also look all the other facial responses, including head rotations, but also, for instance, pupil movements, mouth movements, and also vocalizations. We combine all these metrics into what we call a binary classifier, which is a machine learning algorithm that takes all these metrics into account. We have tested this in many previous studies. We have shown very high sensitivity specificity in previous discovery studies. But recently, we announced a new study that we conducted in the US in almost 500 kids that we call our pilot pre-FDA study. And our model shows a very strong diagnostic performance of 84-85% in terms of sensitivity and specificity. Why are we so happy at BlinkLab with these results? Because this pre-FDA pilot study was an ultimate stress test for the BlinkLab technology, since we included kids not only with autism, but kids that also had like other neurodevelopmental conditions that are very close to autism. And we also included many kids that are very mild on the autism spectrum. It's important to understand that 84-85% is very close to what we call the theoretical ceiling of a product like BlinkLab, because you have to understand that the diagnostic evaluations of autism right now are basically based on subjective assessments done by clinicians. And clinicians sometimes are also uncertain about a child, and that leads to basically a ground truth. And basically, it's the clinical expert, a ground truth that is not 100% either. So basically, our current sensitivity specificity is reflecting the limits of the, let's say, the clinical diagnostic process itself, and not only the technologies. When we talk about the competition, there's two competitors. First one is Cognoa, the other one is ETD, Early Tech. In terms of sensitivity specificity, we outperform both these technologies. Both of them are approved by the FDA. Cognoa did a de novo study. They use smartphone technology, but not they only use smartphones to basically make a video of your child playing at home. And then there's a remote doctor plus an AI assistant tool looking at that video. It's not using the neurometric assessments that BlinkLab is doing. And ETD is using high-speed video cameras that are more like neuroscience based, looking at facial reflex responses, mainly the eye movements. Their sensitivity specificity is way better than Cognoa's, close to ours, but of course their technology is not as scalable as BlinkLab. Recently, we had a second FDA meeting, a pre-submission meeting with the FDA, and we agreed with the FDA that the minimum performance threshold of larger than 65% for both sensitivity and specificity is sufficient for regulatory clearance. And also we spoke with the FDA extensively about study design and the number of participants included. Right now, BlinkLab is onboarding hospitals in the US to participate in our 510K study. We are working with very prestigious names in the US. We're talking with Cincinnati, Rush Medical Center, Vanderbilt, Penn Medicine, Seattle Children's Hospital. The reason why BlinkLab, and it's a great honor for BlinkLab to work with these hospitals, by the way, but the reason why we pick these hospitals is because these hospitals are the key opinion leaders in the field. So when we talk about go-to-market strategy, it is extremely important that they understand the technology and they have credibility from these centers. When we talk about neurodevelopmental conditions, we talk about autism, but as many of you probably know, there's also ADHD and other neurodevelopmental conditions. And when you look at the clinical presentations of, for instance, ADHD, there's, of course, overlap with autism presentation. Some of the symptoms overlap. That's why we have always done studies not focusing on autism only, but we're also always including kids with other neurodevelopmental conditions, including ADHD. And what we have found from the very beginning, and I won't go into the details here, but what we have found from the beginning is that there is a specific ADHD signature in the neurometric data that we are capturing. When you look at the millisecond time scale at the reflexes that we evoke, with the stimulus patterns, with, for instance, a soft tone and a loud tone, you can clearly see that there's a difference between autism and ADHD. That's why we're also doing studies on ADHD. And when you look at our timeline, it will include updates on the regulatory trial for autism, but also for the regulatory trial that we will start for ADHD. The basic diagnostic model for autism, we can label it as DX1. You can see the timeline here on the left. And for DX2, the focus will be ADHD. As I mentioned before, our go-to-market strategy is very traditional. So we will start with research centers. Building key opinion leaders and trust is extremely important. We are building partnerships with these hospitals in the US that will participate in our 510K study. During the study, we will partner with healthcare insurance companies, but also we will work on EHR integration. After FDA review, our first customer will be autism specialist centers because they are the key opinion leaders in the field. They will be the early adopters, and we will have a B2C commercialization pathway here, followed by a B2B expansion into primary care targets, because this is a huge market opportunity in the US, but also in Europe. This is in a nutshell BlinkLab, our technology, our go-to-market strategy, our competition. If you have any further questions, you want to deep dive into what we are doing with BlinkLab, please feel free to reach out to me or to our chairman, Brian Liebman. Thank you for your attention.
Hi everyone, my name is Killian Kelly. I'm CEO and Managing Director at Cynata Therapeutics Limited. So Cynata is an ASX listed company. We've got a market cap of just over $60 million at the moment. We are focused on the development of innovative stem cell therapies specifically mesenchymal stromal cell or MSC-based therapies. You might also have heard them referred to as mesenchymal stem cells. It's all of these terms refer to the same thing. Now, MSCs are cells that naturally occur in everybody's body, but in very small numbers. The reason they're of interest is that they have the ability to balance the immune system, reduce inflammation, and promote tissue repair and regeneration. And those properties make them very useful to treat a wide range of medical conditions. They've been investigated for more than 20 years now by various groups around the world, including various companies, hospitals, and universities. But the big challenge that's held everybody back until now has been how to make these cells consistently and at scale. And that's the problem that Cynata can solve. We have 4 clinical programs underway at the moment, and that includes a phase 3 trial in osteoarthritis of the knee and a phase 2 trial in acute graft versus host disease. I'll tell you a little bit more about both of those in a moment, but for now, just to emphasize that both of those trials are nearing completion, and we expect results from both of them during Q2 in the calendar year 2026. In other words, about 6 months from now. So it's a hugely exciting time ahead. We also have 2 other clinical programs which are at a somewhat earlier stage. We have an ongoing phase 1/2 trial in kidney transplant patients. That has just completed the first cohort of 3 patients who are being reviewed at the moment. And we completed last year a phase 1 trial in patients with diabetic foot ulcers with very promising results. So we have quite a broad pipeline at this point in time. And we also have a number of other preclinical candidates that are ready to be moved forward into the clinic once we're in a position to do that. So, as I said, MSCs are cells that are found naturally in the human body, but in small numbers. So MSC-based therapy involves making larger numbers of these cells and then administering them to patients, much as you would a conventional pharmaceutical product. They have been investigated in more than 1,800 clinical trials over the last 20 years or so, which really emphasizes how much potential these cells hold. But as I said, the key problem for the field has been how to manufacture these cells consistently and at scale. And to explain why that is, let me first explain what a conventional MSC manufacturing process looks like. So this is how everybody else has been making MSCs over the last 20 years or so. They have to get donor tissue, for example, bone marrow, then isolate MSCs from the donated tissue. And when they do that, they end up with a pretty small number of MSCs, but they need lots of MSCs to treat patients, perhaps hundreds of millions of cells just to treat one patient. And of course, if you want to treat many patients, you need even more cells. So how do they do that? They basically grow these cells in a lab. It's a process known as culture expansion, where the cells divide. So 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, and so on. And by doing that, they can generate a relatively large number of cells, but there is a limit. And the reason is that MSCs won't just keep growing and dividing forever. They reach a point where they just stop, which is known as senescence. And before they even reach that point, they start to lose functionality and potency. So that puts a limit on how many doses of these therapies can be produced from each donor. It might be something like a few thousand doses, for example, which might sound like a lot, but in the context of a commercial product, that's really not much at all. So they need to keep going back and getting new donors all of the time. Now, that's a logistical challenge and a cost, but also it's a problem because there's lots of variability between donors, and that results in variability in the final product. And that's a really big problem when you're trying to make a pharmaceutical grade product, which is expected to be consistent over time. So those are the challenges that we're seeking to overcome with our Cymerus platform. This takes a completely different approach to making these cells. So we rely on another type of stem cell called iPSCs, or induced pluripotent stem cells, as our starting material. And the advantage of using these iPSCs is they do have the ability to just keep reproducing themselves indefinitely. So once you have an iPS cell bank, like we do, you can basically make as many cells as you'll ever need without needing new donors or new donations. We then have a patented proprietary process to turn iPSCs into MSCs. So instead of having to go and find donors and harvest MSCs from donors, we simply take a vial of our iPS cells out of the freezer and we manufacture MSCs from that limitless starting material. So this gives us a way to make these cells in an eminently scalable manner, but importantly in a very consistent way and while retaining the potency of the cells. Now, we have done a lot of work to show that not only can we make these cells in a scalable way, but that they actually do what we expect them to do. And in fact, we've shown that in many ways, the cells we produce have superior properties to donor-derived MSCs. And this slide refers to a paper that was published earlier this year, which is available on our website. So moving on to our clinical trials, I mentioned we have a phase 3 clinical trial in osteoarthritis of the knee, which is nearing completion. Osteoarthritis is a very common condition. It's a degenerative joint disease where the cartilage gets worn away over time. It affects hundreds of millions of people around the world. And in fact, almost everybody will develop this if they live long enough. The main problem at the moment is we don't have any treatments that can actually change the course of this disease. So existing treatments simply treat the symptoms. They reduce pain and inflammation and so on, but they don't stop the cartilage getting worn away over time. And therefore, many people end up needing knee replacement surgery, which is, of course, costly. It takes time to recover from, and there's risks associated with it and so on. So most people don't want to end up in that situation. And what they would like instead is a treatment that stops their cartilage getting worse. And that's what we are hoping to show that our cells will do. So in this phase 3 trial, we're aiming to show that it both reduces symptoms, but also slows down or stops the degeneration of the cartilage. This is a 320 patient randomized controlled trial. The final patient visit has already taken place, and we're now analyzing the results, and we expect to have those results in Q2 next year. If we're successful, this could be the first ever disease-modifying treatment for osteoarthritis of the knee. And if so, then that would be absolutely huge, not just for Cynata as a company, but for the treatment of this condition more generally. Now, changing tack to graft versus host disease, this is a condition that many people will not be familiar with because it's quite a rare condition. It's a complication of bone marrow transplants and similar procedures, which are used to treat blood cancers like leukemia and lymphoma. And what happens is immune cells in the transplant recognize the recipient's body as foreign and attack all of their tissues and organs. So it has very nasty symptoms, and unfortunately, it's very difficult to treat. The first line treatment is with steroids, but if they don't work, and they only work in about 50% of patients, if they don't work, unfortunately, the outlook is very grim, with a 2-year survival rate of less than 20%. We did our first phase 1 trial in patients like this who had failed to respond to steroids, and we saw really encouraging results. 87% of patients improved by at least 1 grade, 53% showed a complete response, and we had a 2-year survival rate of 60%. We're now in a phase 2 trial, which is taking place in the US, Europe, and Australia. We have orphan drug designation from the FDA as well. And this trial is also at a very late stage. We're seeking to enroll a total of 64 patients, and so far we've already randomized 60. So we're very close to completing that, and we're still on track to have results in Q2 next calendar year. And the reason we can get from completing enrollment to results so quickly is that the primary endpoint in this case is overall response rate at day 28. So it's a pretty quick readout. And again, this is a treatment area where there is a huge unmet need. So this is a very exciting trial. So as I said, the next 6 to 9 months are really huge for this company. To have 2 trials reading out in very different clinical indications within such a short space of time is very unusual. Each of those trials in their own right has the potential to completely transform the company. And we're obviously very optimistic about both of them. We are pursuing a partnering-driven business model. So our aim would be, with positive clinical data, to seek to do commercial partnerships at the right time. And that also gives us the prospect of relatively near-term revenue. So in the interest of time, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your attention, and please do feel free to reach out if you'd like to know more. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching our video here at the Stock Network's 2025 ASX Gems Conference. Very pleased to tell you more about EBR and how we're poised for success. First of all, we have a very unique solution. There's no competition in the space in what we're launching. We have a large market opportunity, a very large TAM of $3.6 billion US. We achieved FDA approval this year. We have strong reimbursement, a clear commercial strategy, and we have manufacturing systems and capacity in place to scale for growth. So we're very well poised for success. The market that we participate in is called cardiac rhythm management, otherwise known as the pacing market. You're probably familiar with people that have pacemakers. And traditionally, these pacemakers all have leads that go from a battery that is under the skin through the venous system into the heart. And you can see that here in this particular illustration, there's three veins or three leads going into the heart. And the one on the left side of the heart here is on the outside surface, the epicardial surface. And so what we'll focus on is that left side, that left ventricle pacing side of the heart, and that's the target and focus for EBR's WISE system. Now, these leads in general have been the Achilles heel of the market for quite some time. Whenever there's been a major recall in this space, it's usually due to a problem with the leads. And then even when there's not a defect or a manufacturing problem, there's still ongoing chronic issues. For example, they can easily get infected. And when there's an infection of the lead, it has to be removed in order to treat the patient. And then once they're removed, putting them back in after the infection resolves is often quite difficult because these veins can get clotted or thrombosed, and that makes it difficult to replace the leads. So to that end, the industry has been moving towards leadless technologies. And what you see here is a table of the big three incumbents in this space, Medtronic, Abbott, and Boston Scientific, showing the portfolios of leadless technologies that they have either on the market or in development. And you can see that they are well positioned for right ventricular and right atrial pacing, as well as defibrillation, but only EBR has the technology in its WISE system to leadlessly treat the left ventricle. And the other important thing here is that our device is complementary or synergistic with these other systems. So for example, if a clinician wants to use a Micra by Medtronic in the right ventricle, and they also need to do leadless left ventricular pacing, they would use a Micra and a WISE system, and we communicate with the Micra system in order to get what's called biventricular pacing, where you're synchronously pacing both the right and left ventricle at the same time. EBR is the only player in this space and has no competition. So given that, we have a $3.6 billion US dollar total available market based on our current indications. Now, we expect that we can expand this to an even larger TAM in the future as we do more trials, more innovation. There's certainly room to grow into this beyond this. But this is a substantial number for a new technology that's entering the market without any competition. It's been a big year, 2025. We've hit a number of significant milestones. We passed our facility inspection earlier in the year, and that was followed by FDA approval, which are probably the biggest milestones, but we also had multiple reimbursement milestones, and we actually have launched the limited market release in the fourth quarter of this year. So it's been a very significant year for EBR and for our investors. So in summary, EBR is the developer of the world's first and only leadless pacemaker for the left side of the heart for patients suffering from heart failure. We have no direct competition, and we're actually complementary with the other technologies that are out there. We've got FDA approval and a very attractive selling price, which leads to our large total available market of $3.6 billion. We've taken a very disciplined commercialization strategy with a limited market release so that we can firmly establish success and go deep in a few centers and then expand out from there as we gain traction. So thank you very much for your time and attention, and look forward to speaking to everybody when I next visit Australia. Thank you so much.
My name is Leslie Chung, and I'm the CEO and Managing Director of Imugene, developing innovations in cancer treatment. My disclaimer. So our prioritized program is all around our allogeneic CAR T cellular therapy called azer-cel, and I'll explain that in just a moment. So in order to understand allogeneic chimeric antigen receptor T cells, I also have to explain to you the revolutionary drug called autologous CAR Ts, and these are the only currently CAR Ts approved are auto CAR Ts. So the way they work is that a patient comes in with a pretty deadly blood cancer diagnosis. They sit in an armchair for roughly about 7 to 8 hours and get their T cells taken out. Their T cells are then sent to a lab where they're genetically modified, and it takes anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks. And then they infuse those T cells, those souped up T cells, back into the same patient's body. Now, the patient sometimes progresses while they're waiting for the 46 weeks for their drug, and sometimes their T cells couldn't be amped up. So about 20% can't take this, but the 80% that has been able to take this infused CAR T product gets 50% response rate. So 50% of the patient population gets their cancer to be completely cleared, and roughly for a long durability. So auto CAR Ts are currently the only ones that are approved, and we think that we might have something a bit better for our patients. So autologous CAR T, auto CAR Ts, 4 of them are approved against a CD19 target. Allogeneic product is on the rise, and azer-cel, our product, could be the first allo CAR T to be approved. These are already pre-genetically modified, frozen, sent to sites, and they're ready when the patients are ready. So on demand, off the shelf CAR T products. We already have resounding patient data from this, so much so that we just went to the FDA for a pivotal or registrational study strategy. So from February to December, we've increased our overall survival. So meaning we've had patients who had complete response that are devoid of cancer, no cancer growth at all, and a partial responder that is in this disease population is defined as at least 50% reduction in your cancer and disease. So imagine we have 82% for every patient that has walked into our clinic after they have failed off of approved autologous CAR T and come onto our study, and 82% have either gone on to being a CR or a PR. Other drugs in this class, so the auto CAR Ts, have received their approval on 74, 73, 52% overall response rate. Azer-cel is currently at 82%, and this is in a population that have failed at least 3 to 6 lines of therapy. So some patients have gone on to receive 6 therapies and have failed off those, and all including autologous CAR T, but yet we're seeing an overwhelming amount of response rate in these patients. We've also not only gone on to auto CAR T failed, because we're working so well in that population, we have increased our enrollment to CAR T naive. So that means patients who have never had CAR T and have failed off those, they have yet to have received any CAR T therapy. because there's no approved CAR T therapies in these certain indication, this offers a clear opportunity for us to expand into these high value niche population and expand our potential registrational pathway. So we've seen 83% overall response rate currently in our CAR T naive space. So azer-cel commercialization opportunity is rather large. We're looking at 2 billion total addressable, and because there's no CAR Ts currently approved, we could potentially address 100% of this market size, and this is in US alone. Recent deals in CAR T cell therapy has been early and quite large. Most of them have been in the billions. So, which is to say, pharmaceutical companies are looking for these kinds of therapies. As I said, we have gone to the FDA, and we just released an announcement with the onset of minutes that we received from the FDA. So FDA confirmed our dosing, which is azer-cel plus IL-2 dosing regimen, and our lymphodepletion conditioning. These are chemo that dampens down your T cells so that you can receive CAR T therapy. And so that conditioning regimen could be either too high or too low, but the FDA really liked our lymphodepletion conditioning, so that's great. So that means we don't have to enroll further patients and take more data to the FDA to receive support for our phase 3 registrational strategy. So this is going to be in third line and later diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, including patients that have failed off of CAR T. FDA was confirmed support of our single randomized study, meaning one study that could provide an accelerated approval via overall response rate and durability, and then later on receive a full approval for progression-free survival. So the FDA also agreed on our manufacturing process, which is rather huge. This is where a lot of the CAR T companies tend to fall down. So we are gleefully happy that the FDA gave us a check and a tick for all our boxes. So azer-cel strategic appeal, we could be the potential for first in class. We've already received the FDA approval on our registrational study, promising phase 1B results. So that means to say we complete our phase 1B and could move right into a phase 3 because the response rate is so overwhelming. So we've got 82% overall response rates in refractory auto CAR T failed patient in diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. We are seeing 83% in our other cohort of CAR T naive blood cancers. We have the potential for an accelerated approval, strong safety profile in this patient population, and a highly scalable one-to-many therapies modeled, offering broader patient access and low cost of goods versus autologous CAR T that are roughly about $500,000 per patient. We are here with the FDA meeting on our refractory relapse DLBCL registrational strategy and discussions for the CAR T naive cohort. We will release further additional phase 1B azer-cel data, and 2026 will be pretty busy with getting various different fast to market strategy designation from the agency, commencement of our manufacturing supply for the registrational study, getting further designation to expedite our development. So, and then initiating activity for our registrational pivotal study, as well as focusing on our partnering and out licensing opportunities. And as of today, we are just at the biggest world leading blood cancer conference called ASH, and our team is there presenting on azer-cel as we speak. Thank you very much.
Welcome to today's presentation, and thank you for those who are joining. I'm Leanne Hinch, the CEO of Innovators Limited. We are pioneering next-generation exosome diagnostics and therapeutics for cancer. The company owns a proprietary exosome technology platform with multiple applications across research, diagnostics, and therapeutics. Our exosome research tools are commercially available through our global distribution partner, Promega Corporation, who's now selling the product to academic research partners, diagnostics and therapeutics parties throughout the globe. We have a number of assets in development, including 2 clinical stage diagnostics, with our lead asset being our ovarian cancer screening test, which we are moving towards commercialization in the US by December next year. We also have a preclinical stage exosome therapeutic that's in development for treating triple-negative breast cancer. We're focused on partnering our ovarian cancer screening test in order to launch that in the US. And we have an experienced leadership team that is backed by a world-class advisory board with experience in exosome science, diagnostics, cell therapy, and commercialization. Our ASX code is IIQ. The company is well-funded. Having completed a recent $10.2 million capital raise, we have around $14 million in order to take these key assets forward towards key development and commercial milestones over the next 12 months. So I said we're an exosome company. What does that mean, and how are they revolutionizing healthcare? Every cell in our body releases exosomes, also called extracellular vesicles or EVs, not to be confused with an electric car. They carry important information from the parent cell, which then travels around the body to a recipient cell to change that cell's behavior. Innovic has proprietary technology that harnesses these exosomes and the properties of those exosomes to develop next-generation diagnostics and therapeutics for cancer. Our diagnostics enable us, we intercept the exosomes and we develop blood tests that enable early signals from cancer so that we can detect cancer at an early stage. On the therapeutic side, we capture those exosomes from immune cells and we utilize the biomolecules inside the exosomes in order to target and kill cancer cells. So we're developing an ovarian cancer screening test. Ovarian cancer is the deadliest gynecological cancer. The reason being is that the majority, over 70% of people, are diagnosed at a late stage when the symptoms have already appeared and the cancer has metastasized to other areas of the body, resulting in a poor prognosis. The reason for this is that there's no approved tests available for early detection of ovarian cancer in what we call the asymptomatic average risk population. We are developing a test for screening ovarian cancer in women that are of average risk. This will enable us to shift the 5-year survival from, let's say, around 30% when women are diagnosed at stage 3 through to over 95% survival. When we look at the ovarian cancer market, it's a very large market. It's essentially the same market for women that are being screened for breast cancer with mammography. So the eligible population is women that are aged between 45 to 74 years of age, which is when our cancer risk increases due to age. And if I'm looking at the 9 major markets, that's over 438 million women worldwide. So it's a very large market. For breast cancer screening, about 60% of women end up being screened for breast cancer because some choose not to be screened. If we use those statistics, that's a 243 million women that we could help to be saved from early detection of ovarian cancer every 2 years. So what are we developing? It's an exosome-based blood test that is for screening ovarian cancer in this asymptomatic population. We use our proprietary ExoNet technology to isolate exosomes out of the blood. We then combine a number of biomarkers found in those exosomes that are called microRNA and CA125 into an AI algorithm that enables us to detect ovarian cancer at very early stages and accurately. our test has been validated in a large 500 sample retrospective case control study where we've actually shown that we can detect all of early stage disease, that's stage 1 and 2, when there's no symptoms in patients. And additionally, what's important for a population screening test is we need to be able to show that the healthy controls, which is women that are healthy and those that might have a benign mass, we want to be able to achieve low false positives. In that population, we classified 100% of the healthy controls correctly. Now, this is important because for a population screening test, we need to be able to get at least 75% in the general population. As I said, we detected 100% of stage 1 and 2 and 77% overall, and we achieved a specificity of 99.6%, or sorry, over that. Importantly, what we don't want is, with a screening test, you want a very low level of false positives because you don't want to be telling women that don't have ovarian cancer that they do, causing unnecessary costs in terms of follow-up diagnostics, anxiety, and costs to the healthcare system. So we have a dual path commercialisation strategy for our ovarian cancer test to get it to market. This enables us to maximise speed, access and value for patients, clinicians, and also for investors. We're commercialising the test first as a laboratory developed test with a single laboratory partner, really targeting the US to enable our partner to launch the test in 2027. Essentially, the way that we develop this test and get it adopted is we essentially put out a number of publications showing our data. We present that at clinical conferences around the world in order to build our key opinion network. The data we use can be used to build evidence for reimbursement, and it can also be used to support our future in vitro diagnostic regulatory filings. So the second part of our strategy is to get regulatory approval. Essentially, that will require a large pivotal clinical trial. From that trial, we'll also develop health economic data to support reimbursement, and we'll also be seeking to get inclusion in clinical guidelines. This is important because getting inclusion in clinical guidelines means that every doctor, if the guideline says to use our test, will be using our test for their patients. So it broadens clinical adoption, enables global market reach by getting regulatory approvals around the globe, and is a sustainable growth strategy for the company with higher reimbursement levels. So in terms of our clinical and regulatory strategy, as I said, the test is basically for asymptomatic average risk women that are aged between 45 and 74. We are moving into a number of retrospective clinical studies to further validate the test in larger sample sizes of up to 2,000 participants. We'll also be showing disease specificity. We don't want to get positives for other diseases such as pelvic inflammatory disease or endometriosis. And we also want to show the test works in high-risk populations such as those that have got BRCA1 mutations. Ultimately, we'll be partnering this test, as I said, with a clinical laboratory partner. That's a Sonic Healthcare, for example, or it could be a LabCorp or a Quest Diagnostics. And they'll then need to complete a number of analytical and clinical validation studies to show that the test is accurate, reproducible, and gets the same results that we got in our lab. And ultimately, we'll then be taking it through the IVD pathway. Just to highlight, this diagnostic deal space for screening tests has really become quite exciting in the last 6 months. Recently, a large US company called Exact Sciences licensed a colorectal screening test, which was at FDA approval stage from a company called Freenome. Now, that license was for the US market only and was for $885 million. Interestingly, recently, Abbott has just announced acquisition of that same company, Exact Sciences, for $23 billion. So very exciting space, and that is the space that we're in. Now, I said we've got a exosome diagnostics pipeline, but also we have an exosome therapeutics pipeline. We're developing a first-in-class exosome therapeutic to target and destroy solid tumours. This is a platform technology, which means there's multiple therapeutic applications. Our initial focus is on developing what we call a cell-free therapy to target and kill solid tumours. The importance of this is that our exosomes enable targeting specificity, which they actually inherit from the immune cells that we use to derive the exosomes. We've shown already that our CAR exosomes have anti-tumor efficacy, and this is based on the immune cells that we use and certain cytotoxic molecules that they contain called granzymes and porphyrins that kill these tumours. And importantly, exosomes have got a reduced risk of immune rejection, making them potentially very safe for treatment of a range of solid tumours. And ultimately, they'll be delivered at a lower cost than what's called CAR T therapy, which currently costs around $500,000 US per treatment. This will be more akin to an antibody therapy. The average cost of an antibody therapy is around $165,000 per year. Our initial target for our CAR exosome therapy is triple-negative breast cancer. I mentioned we've already shown in vitro proof of concept for triple-negative breast cancer, and we are expecting to deliver in vivo proof of concept by the end of this year. So we've got investors clearly waiting on those results, and we'll be looking forward to presenting those soon. The reason we're targeting triple-negative breast cancer is it lacks the key targets that are found on other breast cancer types. This means that there's limited treatment options and resulting in chemotherapy being the standard of care with few other alternatives. There's a higher recurrence rate and a very poor prognosis. So there's a clear unmet need for a targeted therapy that will improve treatment outcomes and survival rates for patients. And that is what we're focused on doing. So currently we've basically established our master cell banks. We have a proprietary technology for isolating those exosomes. We've achieved in vitro proof of concept. We're about soon to announce our in vivo proof of concept results, and that will lead us into the important component where we move into process development, select our manufacturing partner, and then complete our IND enabling studies that will enable us to move into first-in-man studies, which we're expecting to do by 2028. So in terms of upcoming catalysts, the key focus for the company is really commencing these clinical studies for our ovarian cancer screening test, which is actually already underway. We expect to progress our IVD and clinical regulatory strategy and report on that clinical data in the first half of next year, followed by partnering that test and enabling our final analytical and clinical validation in that partner lab in order to launch the test in 2027 in the US as a laboratory developed test, which will be very exciting for the company, for our investors, and most importantly for patients. And on the CAR exosome side, as I said, we're soon to report on our in vivo efficacy data and then move into our manufacturing studies and preclinical studies, both in breast cancer and also in ovarian cancer, due to the fact that the company really has an integrated exosome diagnostic and therapeutic strategy. So we've got a screening test to detect ovarian cancer early, and we also want to be able to provide a targeted therapeutic to better treat those patients. So the company is now well positioned for growth. We are well funded with around $14 million in the bank to move our ovarian cancer test forward into commercialization in the US and to advance our preclinical exosome therapeutic over the next 12 months. We also expect to see an uplift in our share price given the number of catalysts that we've got coming up over the next 12 months. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nathan Smith, and I am the Chief Executive Officer at Neuroscientific Biopharmaceuticals with the ASX ticker NSB. We are an ASX-listed biopharmaceutical company with patented stem cell solutions that we're developing for complex and unmet medical needs. And we have four basic pillars that we drive our organization from. Number one is our robust company profile with a strong balance sheet and cash in hand to take us with a strong runway through the end of next year. The development of our STEMsmart technology platform, which I'll talk a lot about upcoming, which has really driven an evolution of our organization ever since the STEMsmart platform was acquired in June of this year, June of 2025. So the company, the organization as a whole, has pivoted pretty strongly since that time. And so the most recent iteration of NSB has really been around for 5 to 6 months at this point. The STEMsmart technology platform has demonstrated proven clinical efficacy, which is what makes it so exciting and why it has driven some excitement in the market that has obviously come back down more recently. And I'll talk a lot about that. But the clinical efficacy really demonstrates that the product works. Now we just have to demonstrate that in larger patient populations and different geographies to take it towards commercialization. And then finally, with any cell-based therapy, the supply chain and the manufacturing is so critical. And so the fourth pillar of our organization is really around securing the supply chain. So I will make some forward-looking statements. A company overview. The share price was currently sitting at 11 cents. It was up around 25 in late July when I came on board as the CEO, and the market cap sitting around 36, 37. We have around $7 million cash in hand, so we're sitting in a pretty positive financial position right now. Our leadership team is very strong, all Australia based and mostly based in Western Australia, although I'm based in Melbourne. Rob and Paul came over with the STEMsmart technology, and Rob is our board chairman. He's also on the board of the Parent Institute, where Paul is ex-PwC and Ernst & Young. Dr. Anton Uvarov is one of the co-founders of NSB and is on the board from a number of different companies. And then Clark Barlow has been with NSB for a number of years as well, and is fantastic. I myself have over 25 years within the biopharmaceutical and cell therapy industry. Most recently working as head of business development at a contract manufacturer called Cell Therapies, based out of the Peter MacCallum Cancer Center in Melbourne. And I get a chance to work very closely with Dr. Marion Sturm, who is a pillar in the MSc development community. She has over 40 years experience developing MSCs and was the inventor of the STEMsmart technology. And then our chief medical officer, Dr. Kathy Cole, she came on board around the same time that I did in late July of this year. And she's been fantastic with coordinating our clinical activities and is great to work with as well. Both Marion and Kathy drive our newly appointed clinical and scientific advisory board, which has some excellent clinicians that work in the gastrointestinal field, kidney, lung, and also scientific development as well. And so we had our first advisory board meeting in November, and so that was fantastic. And so we have a bunch of actions coming out of that to drive our IP and strengthen our IP. So the STEMsmart technology, that's really what has driven the evolution of NSB. And STEMsmart technology is a mesenchymal stem cell product. Just say stem cells for now. We have a patent on the manufacturing process, and it has an unbelievable safety profile, which is very critical because this product has a distribution model very similar to biologic drugs and small molecules, where we can make a lot of product from one donor, freeze it down, and then it can be taken off the shelf to be used by different patients. There's no need for HLA typing or concerns around immune response from patients. And so having a fantastic safety profile is critical for products like this. And the great thing, and I think why the acquisition that occurred earlier this year drove the stock price so high, was the fact that there's some fantastic tailwinds from another Australian biotech company called Mesoblast, where they received their approval from the FDA late last year, late in 2024, for their MSC product for pediatric steroid resistant graft versus host disease. And That is the first MSC product that has been approved in the United States and for the US market. And that's a fantastic win. And so the pathway for commercialization into the United States has been established by Mesoblast. And that's great. And so what that does is that allows us to be able to take that pathway that's been the trail that's been blazed by Mesoblast and drive our product towards commercialization. But we think that we have a better product. And the great thing about StemSmart is that it actually it's activated during the manufacturing process. So it actually has a different phenotype than other MSC products. And what we see is that our stem cell product, StemSmart, actually performs best in diseases where they have really high inflammation, high to severe inflammation that's chronic and that it's long lasting and for patients with very poor quality of life. And so what we've seen and where we have some fantastic clinical data is in Crohn's disease. And so we are really looking very hard and we are strategically driving towards a phase 2 study, phase 2 clinical trial in refractory Crohn's disease. So just as an update and for people who don't know about Crohn's disease is an chronic inflammation of the gastrointestinal tract. And it's for patients from young to the elderly. There are about 6 to 8 million patients worldwide, with over 1 million in the United States alone. 30% of them do not respond to current treatments. And those current treatments are antibiotics, steroids, and biologic drugs, huge biologic drugs like Humira and Stelara. For those patients that are refractory or don't respond to conventional treatments, they have really no treatment options except for surgery. And so this is the space where we feel StemSmart can come in and have a very a significant role in the treatment paradigm for Crohn's disease. There's also a subset of patients that have something called fistulas within their body, and their quality of life is horrendous. I mean, they don't respond to anything, and so that's another subset of Crohn's disease. An even worse subset than refractory Crohn's, where we feel StemSmart actually has a chance to play. And so we've actually opened up a special access program earlier this year where we are treating patients with Crohn's fistulas. Special access program under the TGA is a pathway where clinicians can treat patients with an experimental drug because the treatment options aren't there. And so we're working with clinicians to treat patients with fistulizing Crohn's with our product. And so we started that in June once the StemSmart asset was acquired, and we've already treated the first 4 patients, and that data we will plan to have in January once we were able to receive it from the clinician. And that data will help us support us as we move into the phase 2 clinical trial for refractory Crohn's disease down the line. Aside from Crohn's disease, the market potential for this product we're sitting somewhere, I think currently between 25 to 35 billion is what I think we're looking at for the current indications that we have strong data for already from early phase 1 trials. And so the potential for this product, has, in 4 to 5 years when we can get to market, 3 to 5 years when we can get to market, will be somewhere between the 40, 60 to $80 billion range if we can access the market and we can drive this towards the timeline that we're looking at. And so I think the market potential for this product is huge, and we will continue to develop it as we identify that. And this does not include the potential for us to acquire other IP to help strengthen the StemSmart IP, be that by methods of application or adjuvants that help support the StemSmart efficacy within patients. So all these things we're considering and taking a look at this time. So key milestones that are going to drive the market, really what we're looking at is like I mentioned, the special access program for fistulizing Crohn's disease. First 4 patients, we will, once we have the data, we'll announce and be able to share that with the market in January. The full program where we have treated all the patients and have the data for all the patients, we will provide by mid-year of this year. We're also in the process right now of phase 2 startup activities. We're actually actively working through who we're going to work with from the clinical research side. For the phase 2, we brought on a clinical affairs lead And so all that activity is starting to ramp up pretty heavily. And then the trial we're anticipating initiation by the end of 2026 for that trial. And as long, again, with the data that we have previously, as long as we can demonstrate that efficacy is, that we've seen previously is the same in this phase 2 trial, then we would be looking to partner with a larger pharma organization to take that through phase 3 and commercial application. And so, and marketing authorization. And so that's the strategy right now. I think it's pretty straightforward. Now it's really executing those pieces, and that's what we're doing right now. And then once we have the Crohn's disease phase 2 trial up and running, we'll be looking at other indications and starting the clinical development of those programs, so that we have the next program coming through for patients that in need of something like StemSmart. So I think, I talked briefly about the special access program that we're doing. And so really what we're trying to do with the special access program is build a data set that's more recent, right? The previous clinical data that we have is from, I think, 2015, 2016, something in the in 2010s. And so we're building up more recent data with the fistulizing Crohn's patients. We're also working with the clinicians and the patients, right? And trying to build excitement for that, so that recruitment for the phase 2 study, once we initiate the end of next year, will be fantastic. And then data from the SAS program will really help us in understanding dosing and follow-up and maintenance if patients need additional doses down the line. All that will help build and drive the design of our phase 2 clinical program. And so this SAS program is very critical from that perspective. And I think what it also does is it also provides some updates to the market while we are planning our phase 2 and getting our phase 2 study initiated by the end of next year. And then the last piece, and a really important point when it comes to any cell-based therapy, especially stem cell type products, is really ensuring the manufacturing and the secure source of supply. And so that's why earlier this year, we announced our partnership with QGen Cell Therapeutics up in Brisbane. They've been around for 25 years, working with the TGA and other regulatory agencies to supply clinical product and early phase commercial product. And so I think this partnership is really critical from our side to make sure that we've got not just the product, but the scale to be able to continue to grow as we move through the clinical phases, right? And then as we partner for phase 3 and commercial, obviously we'll be looking even closer at the manufacturing as we get closer and closer to commercial. Again, do we need to build and establish manufacturing in the United States, especially if tariffs are still in play? These are all things that we'll need to consider down the line, and we'll be working with, whoever we partner with for phase 3 and commercial to make those decisions. So our vision for StemSmart moving forward, we're really focused on providing a solution for patients with refractory Crohn's that have failed conventional therapies. There's an unmet medical need there that we are really looking to fill with the StemSmart technology and and then beyond Crohn's disease, the StemSmart platform, we're really looking at moving that into other indications to be able to access patients and provide this product to patients that have these severe unmet medical needs and can benefit from this type of product. We have, the special access program underway, and we're really driving towards the phase 2 clinical program for the end of next year. And we're putting all of the pieces that we need in play to make sure that we deliver on that, including from clinical development, the manufacturing, and the leadership that we have in place. So that this evolution of neuroscientific that really started with the acquisition of StemSmart in June of this year has really focused and really brought about the foundation for something fantastic, which is what we've been driving the last 6 months. And we should see some great benefit in 2026 and some great leaps forward. And so I'll leave it with that. Please, if you have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to contact me. I'm happy to address any questions around, our organization, our technology, and our plans moving forward. So I'll leave it with that. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Mark Muzzin, Managing Director and Founder of Nexen Limited, and I'd like to present you our company that's just been recently listed on the ASX. At Nexen, we're developing a suite of point-of-care rapid diagnostics with lab-grade accuracy. We were founded on targeting Group B strep for expectant mothers. This is a really difficult bacteria to isolate, as there's thousands of bacteria present, and GBS is in such low numbers. GBS was a challenge that we were successful in isolating, which led us to creating a platform, and now we've been able to come up with new devices in a relatively short development timeframe. We have a bold vision, and we truly believe that everyone will either directly or indirectly benefit from one of our tests in their lifetime. We use a simple device architecture. It looks like a rat test that was used for COVID, but ours is very accurate. And as we call it, it is a lab on a stick. It is a true point of care with fast results, and they usually come within 20 minutes. We believe Nexen will really improve outcomes and reduce pressure on global health systems, accessibility to better healthcare in remote regions where there's no central labs at their disposal. So we really think we'll make a difference there. Preventative measures are so important and helps with clinical efficiencies. Our first device is our GBS sensor, and we have a suite of kidney function tests under development. There is a great opportunity in both these areas to really make an impact in global health. We work in three really key sectors: in the human health sector, ag tech, and in biosecurity. At Nexen, we do have huge market opportunities with our suite of diagnostics. With our GBS sensor, there is 132 million births annually, and we think we'll be able to take a fair chunk of the market share in testing rather than the pathology tests that are currently in most developed countries. But our renal tests impacts over 850 million people, and we really see an opportunity to have a big impact in these two markets. We're currently progressing rapidly into our market rollout. Clinical trials are underway at Northern Health in Victoria, and there's more sites to be added soon. US market is so important for us, and we're working for sites for our FDA 510(k) submission, and that is currently underway. Early revenue opportunities are being pursued in multiple jurisdictions, especially in the UK, India, Malaysia, and in Hong Kong. We have a fantastic team at Nexen, led by our Executive Chairman, Rhys O'Connell, but our board and advisory board and exemplary. I have to make special reference to Professor Shekhar Gupta and Professor Vipul Vansal, both at RMIT, and instrumental in getting us to the point we are. Vipul was the actual founder of the technology, and is the main driving force behind all the technological advances the company makes. We really want to make an impact for health systems, and we have the team and a clear strategy with our commercial rollout. We'd really like you to consider Nexen as your next investment opportunity, and we welcome you all as shareholders.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate the ability to speak to you about Oncosil and the Oncosil device, which is an intratumoral placement of phosphorus 32 for locally advanced pancreatic cancer. Standard disclaimer, as most of you have seen. So what is Oncosil Medical all about? Oncosil Medical is a global medical device company focused on interventional oncology for the treatment of unresectable, locally advanced pancreatic cancer, or by the acronym commonly known as LAPC. Our mission as a company is to improve patient outcomes by utilizing targeted intratumoral placement of phosphorus 32 or 32P microparticles in addition to chemotherapy. Oncosil Medical's lead product, the Oncosil device, is brachytherapy, which has received CE marking approval, providing authorization in both the EU and the UK. The device is approved for use in New Zealand, Hong Kong, Switzerland, Turkey, and Israel. Oncosil is designed as a breakthrough device in both Europe and the United States. We believe in our technology and its ability to truly have a positive impact in improving the lives of patients around the globe. This is a brief corporate overview. Sorry, this is as at December 9th. So the market cap is 19.4 million. Shares on issue are 18.83. The share price today at close was 102.5. Alcosol has an experienced board and senior management team. The board is led by Dr. Thomas Duthie, who is our non-executive chair. Tom has 20 years plus experience across financial markets, corporate development, and board level roles, and has been involved in numerous successful M&A transactions. As for myself, I've been in the healthcare industry for just over 40 years, and I've got about 30 years of medical device experience. Lel Smits is our other non-executive director, and she is an award-winning entrepreneur, director, and investor relations advisor, serving as a director on Australian Shareholders Association since 2021. Shelley Stain is our chief financial officer. Shelley has extensive experience in senior accounting, commercial and financial analysis, and audit roles across listed and private companies. Dr. John Bell is our chief medical officer with 12 plus years experience as consultant interventional radiologist and chief of interventional radiology at the Christie's Cancer Center in Manchester, and he is an internationally recognized expert in interventional oncology. Renzo DiCarlo is our head of transformation, and he's a proven nuclear medicine executive with over 25 years of experience in therapeutic drugs and medical devices. So, in terms of pancreatic cancer prognosis, the prognosis of pancreatic cancer has largely remained unchanged for about 40 years. As you will see from this slide, there have been numerous advances in cancers such as prostate, breast, bowel cancer, lung cancer. However, at the bottom of the list, pancreas remains largely unchanged in terms of the prognosis. So the prognosis is not particularly great in this patient population, which means that survival rates are very, very poor. 8.5 months is the median overall survival, and less than 12% of patients actually reach 5-year survival. It has the lowest survival rate of any other cancer. The number of cases and deaths, both estimated to increase by 40% before 2035. So what does all that mean? It really means that new therapeutic options are urgently needed in this indication. Just a brief look at what pancreatic cancer looks like at the stage of diagnosis. So if one looks to the left of the slide, one sees that approximately 15% of patients at the time of diagnosis will be able to undergo a surgical resection with curative intent. That gives those patients the best possible outcome in terms of median overall survival at about 19 months. If we go to the extreme right side of the slide, those are patients with metastatic disease, and they represent, unfortunately, the biggest proportion of patients at the time of diagnosis, at about 55%. So what are their options? Generally, only palliative therapies, and usually it's chemotherapy only. So if the patient is placed on gemcitabine, then the median overall survival is less than 6 months. If it's gemcitabine plus nab-paclitaxel, it's approximately 8.5 months. And patients that are placed on FOLFIRINOX, if they are fit enough to tolerate the treatment, because it's quite toxic, that offers metastatic patients the best possible outcome at about 11.1 months. Unfortunately, it's also a widely known fact that 30% of locally advanced pancreatic cancer patients show metastatic progression within 6 months. So this moves us to the middle of the slide where we talk about locally advanced pancreatic cancer. They represent about 30% at the time of diagnosis. So they're typically treated with palliative therapies, chemotherapy, or chemotherapy plus or minus radiation. They have a median overall survival of these patients of about 13 months. This is the area in which we have our approval with our CE mark in Europe and in other jurisdictions. So what does the Oncosil device look like? What is it comprised of? So bottom line is that we are looking to drive an increase in resection rates by downstaging patients with unresectable, locally advanced pancreatic cancer, thereby leading to potentially an increase in survival benefits and quality of life of these patients. Oncosil is intended to treat locally advanced unresectable pancreatic cancer, as I mentioned earlier. And this is in addition to the use of chemo-based gemcitabine combination with FOLFIRINOX is currently been conducted in a trial which is concluded in July of this year. So Oncosil is a single-use brachytherapy device comprised of microparticles and a diluent. It's implanted directly into the pancreatic tumor via injection under endoscopic ultrasound guidance. 98% of all the radiation is delivered within 81 days of the injection, causing damage to cancer cell DNA and killing malignant cancer cells with no damage to surrounding tissue. The procedure is relatively simple for endoscopists because it's something that they do for a living, which is conducting biopsies on these patients. And now instead of taking something out, a specimen from the tumor, they're now putting something into the pancreatic tumor. And it only requires one supervised procedure, given the simplicity and familiar with standard everyday biopsy procedure. So where does that lead us? It leads us also to explore the possibility of percutaneous delivery, and we believe that this is a transformational step and anticipated that this will significantly increase our market penetration for various reasons, expanding the number of clinicians to include interventional radiology, broader access, patient access and points of care. It's an outpatient day procedure completed generally within 20 minutes, conscious sedation or local pain control. The patient's actually awake during their procedure. This study was conducted in Amsterdam. It's known as the Oncosil study. It was completed in July 2025. Initial data was presented at the CIRSE meeting in Barcelona in September of 2025. And that's the annual meeting in Europe for interventional radiology and interventional oncology. So what that means for us is that in the second half of calendar year 2026, we hope to make Oncosil device commercially available to interventional radiologists. There's certainly a growing body of evidence in relation to the Oncosil device. This is a rather busy slide, but I want to direct your attention here to the center of the slide, where we talk about propensity score weighted landmark analysis. And if we look at the ability to downstage patients to curative resection, we see that in this group, in this patient population, it's about 31%. versus with chemo only, it's about 13.6%. And if we look at local progression-free survival, the median is 15.6 months versus 9.3 months, and distant PFS or PFS median, which means progression-free survival, again, 14.2 months versus 10.7 months. Overall survival, we see a difference where Oncosil plus chemotherapy at 20 months versus 12.3 months. So this was conducted in terms of a propensity score weighted landmark analysis, and all of the data which I've just mentioned to you are statistically significant. On the far right, if we look at metastatic pancreatic cancer, one sees that this is a very, very small cohort of patients that were treated at the University of Adelaide, and we see local disease control at 100% at 16 weeks. We see median overall survival in this patient population at 13.8 months. Now, those numbers are small, but it does give us a signal that there is potentially an upside for Oncosil in treating selected patients with metastases that would be stable, where the patient is not threatened by the metastases, but they're going to succumb to their primary disease. So in terms of the executive summary, where are we today? So it's now for sale. The Oncosil device is for sale in over 34 countries by the CE mark. Commercial ramp-up has commenced in financial year 2026 and is driven by significant growth in existing European markets. We've got increased market access via label expansion, combining new delivery methods and new chemotherapy methods, and this is to be approved still by the regulator once these files are submitted. We believe we've got a platform technology as well, which can be leveraged into other cancer indications such as bile duct cancer, liver, and potentially glioblastoma. I mentioned earlier in one of the early slides that we have an experienced board and management team in the commercialization of oncology devices. It's also fair to point out that our entire commercial team have experience in this interventional oncology / interventional radiology sector. The global addressable market is about $4.2 billion with no direct competitor. I mentioned before that the technology has breakthrough designation in the EU, the UK, and the US, and the United States, with extensive patent coverage across all geographies. The large global pancreatic cancer population of about 510,000 per annum. Our target of that is about 13%, and as I mentioned, that's locally advanced, unresectable population. That translates into 153,000 patients per annum, and this is expected to grow by 37 to 40% by 2035. So there has been really negligible survival improvement over 20 years. In fact, just to restate what I mentioned earlier, less than 12% of patients survive 5 years, and the median overall survival for these patients is about 8.5 months. So patient recruitment has been mentioned in both the Oncosil study, which is to use this percutaneously, and the TRIP results, which is to combine the Oncosil device with FOLFIRINOX chemotherapy, which happens to be the backbone chemotherapy in the European Union and the UK for these patients. So we intend to expand the label by adding those in the not too distant future with submission to the regulator. What are some of our significant achievements over the past year? So we have received our MDR approval And this was very important for us since all medical devices needed to, with a CE mark, needed to undergo MDR approval. We got that. We received that in the first round of submission. So very important step for us. It also saw the removal of post-market restrictions. We were obliged to have sites participate in the Osprey registry. Anybody that wanted to use the device needed to sign on to the registry. That's no longer the case. It's no longer mandatory. We've also fully recruited both clinical trials that we were involved in. We've also commissioned a second manufacturing facility in Sydney, Australia, that is activated and is ready to undergo validation. We've had continued constructive discussions with US FDA on the regulatory pathway for the OncoSol device in bile duct cancer, or as it's commonly known, DCCA, distal cholangiocarcinoma. In Europe, the German Federal Joint Committee, or GBA, tender process is underway. The tender applications have all been sent, so that should be, the GBA should be looking to announce that, I would imagine, early in 2026, and that trial is expected to move forward. The beauty of this trial is that it is fully funded, and OncoSol will receive payment for every dose that is used in the study. More recently, we've completed first patient treatments in Germany and Portugal. Germany is a very important market for us, as it will represent about 50% of the total turnover for OncoSol in the European Union. So the calendar year 2025 and 2026 is clearly catalyst rich. There is strong commercial momentum and growing hospital adoption across existing markets in Austria, Germany, Greece, Israel, Italy, Portugal, Spain, Turkey, and the United Kingdom. Tender finalizations in selected markets are expected to drive significant revenue growth. The finalization of the GBA tender process to appoint CRO and commence recruitment into the trial is something that we anticipate may start in April of next year. And again, we talked earlier in this presentation about label expansion targeting percutaneous delivery and the addition of FOLFIRINOX as a result of the TRIP study. So the first commercial production of the Sydney manufacturing facility is anticipated by the end of first half of calendar year 2026, and we're certainly accelerating commercial activities through expanded market access and new geographic opportunities across the Nordic markets and MENA, which is the Middle East and North Africa regions. And we have our TGA file under review by the regulatory body. So there is significant commercial opportunity here. If we look at the right side of the slide, the OncoSol device really remains at the early stage of commercialization in existing market geographies, with a market size of approximately just short of 900 million Australian dollars. This will expand to about nearly $1.4 billion over the next 18 to 24 months. So the market penetration is really now expected to accelerate over the near term, and this will be driven by percutaneous delivery in the second half of calendar year 2026, and the commercial patient recruitment for the GBA trial. Upcoming milestones, catalysts over the next 12 months. We've talked about regulatory submissions. We've talked about the finalization of the GBA trial design, the first commercial dose supply from the Australian facility. We're hoping that this will all conclude by the end of Q1 to certainly Q2, and the commercial dose supply probably may slide into Q2. But certainly we're also looking at commercial treatment in France in Q2 of calendar year 2026. I'm sorry, that is not calendar year 2025. Review of real world data from the Osprey registry is likely to happen in early 2020, late of this calendar year as well, and that is underway. So recruitment of the GBA trial will start in April of 2026 at the earliest. We're also looking at other opportunities in France for reimbursement under HAS, and also particularly with Forfait Innovation in France, which looks at technologies that show promise, where we may be able to participate in something that could be similar to what we have done with GBA. So the regulatory submission for inclusion into the FOLFIRINOX label is likely to happen in Q3 of 2026. Label expansion is also expected to happen for the percutaneous delivery, that we anticipate that would be completed in that quarter, and the completion of regulatory processes to enable us to launch in the MENA region. And at the end of calendar year 2026, we expect label expansion to include the use of FOLFIRINOX chemotherapy. And I thank you very much for your attention and hope that you found this presentation very useful.
Good morning. My name is James Fitter. I'm the CEO of OneView Healthcare, and here to share a little bit about the story and where we are in our journey. So this is a pretty familiar sight for anyone who's unlucky enough to be in hospital, which is the workforce challenge that is plaguing nursing globally. The World Health Organization estimates that we will have a shortage of 5 million nurses by 2030. And that translates in the United States, which is our key market, to roughly 200,000 nurses short next year. This was a problem before the pandemic, but it's obviously been exacerbated by the pandemic. So the supply side of nursing is really challenging. And of course, on the demand side, sadly, we're all getting older. And in the United States in particular, there's some really interesting demographics that suggest, the Urban Institute suggests, that between the start of this decade and 2040, we're going to see twice as many people over the age of 65 in the United States, doubling from 40 million to 80 million. And sadly, of course, 65 is the age at which we start to become much more dependent on hospital services. And ironically, in the United States, since the pandemic, the number of licensed hospital beds has actually decreased by 3%. So there's a real demand problem and a supply problem. So what do we do to fix that? This is an example of one of our key customer sites in New York City. This is at NYU Langone. It's the #1 ranked hospital in New York. It's the #3 ranked hospital nationally, just behind the Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic. And this is the OneView platform. So as the name suggests, we're providing OneView into a whole bunch of disparate systems that typically don't talk to each other. And our objective is to get the patient home safer, faster, better informed, less likely to readmit. We really tackling 4 key goals. Firstly, obviously enhancing the patient experience, enhancing the care team experience. So that's nurses, orderlies, techs, whoever might be coming in and out of the room. Obviously, improving safety and outcomes is a huge part of our value proposition, and ultimately optimizing operational efficiency for hospitals that are still really suffering to generate profit margins. In fact, in the United States, we still haven't got back to pre-pandemic profit margins. Our customer base is extensive. We began our journey in Australia with the Epworth in Melbourne. We're in Sydney Children's in Sydney. We have a fantastic relationship with those customers in Australia. But it's the United States where we've really enjoyed a lot of commercial success. And you can see here we're We count amongst our customers the #1 hospital in San Francisco, in St. Louis, in New York, in Washington and Virginia. But we've also enjoyed commercial success in Thailand, where we're in the #1 hospital there at Bumrungrad, and in the Middle East. So what's driving the business? You saw earlier the tablet and the TV in the room. We expanded our portfolio last year to include a digital whiteboard, a digital door sign, and MyStay Mobile. So we're really trying to provide this connected ecosystem of devices, all designed to help that workflow efficiency that I talked about. And the key driver for us since the pandemic has been the emergence of the virtualization of care. So in the same way I'm talking to you virtually from the other side of the world, we saw during the pandemic, we asked all of our customers, what can we do to help? And unanimously, they said, look, could you please give us some sort of video link so the nurse can communicate with the patient from outside the room? So we did that. That enabled virtual rounding, virtual visitation, virtual interpretation for patients who don't speak English. And that was a bit of a band-aid solution for the pandemic because the tablet wasn't always facing the patient. But what we know is the TV in the room is always facing the patient. So what we did is we built a virtual care API, and we now have enabled the delivery of virtual nurses, virtual physicians, virtual pharmacists to come into the room to monitor high-risk patients, to take the burden off the floor nurse. And that's hugely important. And right now that's being done by humans using the virtual care API. So we get a message, patients watching the cricket, we get a message saying, hey, the doctor wants to borrow the TV. We pass control to the virtual care company. They have the consultation. We then pass it back to the entertainment experience. And in the future, of course, that will be handled by AI because the advances in computer vision have been really extensive. So this is what it looks like. On the left-hand side, this is a latest deployment at Inova. You can see the door sign outside the room. The whiteboard is to the right of the TV, which replaces the old analog whiteboards you'd be familiar with. And you can see the TV, we have the camera next to us. In this case, it's a Teladoc camera, and we're basically delivering that capability through the compute device that OneView has behind the television. So we're effectively enabling the virtualization of care. And the virtualization of care happens to be the single most important issue facing every hospital in the United States. Because there's a shortage of nurses, we're now using virtual nurses to onboard the patient for education, for discharge planning, for anything that can help take pressure off the floor nurse. Because the moment patients have a panic button in the room, they tend to press that panic button, the nurse call button, whether they want a glass of water or they think they're having a heart attack. So if we can now divert that non-medical, non-clinical request to a virtual nurse, that's going to drive massive efficiency. And some of the studies we're doing are suggesting we can see as much as a 60% improvement in the productivity of the floor nurse, which is absolutely massive. And you can see here nearly 2/3 of chief nursing officers in the United States are either piloting or looking to deliver a virtual care solution. And we are basically the conduit for that delivery, which is driving significant interest in bedside technology and has really revalidated. So what's all that mean in terms of numbers? In the first half of this year, we reported our best half ever, a 36% increase in year-over-year revenue growth. You can see here some of the customers that we were deploying in the first half of this year. And in the second half of this year, that work has accelerated, and we will obviously enjoy the full year of recurring revenue from these customers in 2026. Obviously, as a technology company, AI is central to what we do. We were the first listed company in Australia to be ISO 42001 certified, which means our artificial intelligence management systems have been certified by the International Standards Organization. That's an organization that's recognized in 140 countries. So that gives us the foundation to deliver AI-powered products internally and externally. And it's something we're obviously very proud of. So the first product we launched after a really extensive research in 2024 was the virtual patient assistant. So again, this is an added layer before the virtual nurse where a patient can communicate with the tablet and ask simple questions. When am I going home? What's my medication? What are the side effects of my medication? Again, taking the burden off the nurse and documenting all of that in the back end of the electronic medical record so the nurse can see the context of that. So what that looks like on this very simple graph is on the left-hand side, we have Ovi, which is the name we've given to our virtual care assistant. That is for basic common questions, basic education. It will communicate in 50 different languages. It's obviously always available. It's low cost. In the middle, we have that virtual nurse who will be coming in through the OneView infrastructure for more complex education, discharge planning, as I mentioned, and at-the-elbow support for the floor nurse. And that liberates now the floor nurse to practice at the top of their license and deliver that personal connection, the physical care, and the urgent care, which is such a vital part of care delivery. Finally, I just want to mention we were very fortunate to be selected by Baxter International, which is a $15 billion company in the United States. They're the largest supplier of hospital beds, infusion pumps, and nurse call systems in the United States. They are now reselling OneView across their sales organization. And you can see here the depth and breadth of the opportunities, where you can see a OneView logo as the states in which they've already delivered, but they have over 180 qualified leads in their pipeline, representing nearly 5% of the market. So super exciting time for us as we head into 2026. And I hope that gives you a brief introduction to the company. Thanks very much for your time.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us at the TSN Gems Conference. My name is Camille Farah, and I'm the CEO and Managing Director of Optiscan Imaging, a company based in Melbourne, which has miniaturized confocal microscopy to the point of being able to be used in clinical applications. Just a little bit about the company to start off with, for those not familiar with us. We're Melbourne-based. We've been manufacturing confocal endomicroscopes for the last 30 years. We're patent protected. We've had our products validated by very large multinationals, including Pentax and Zeiss. We operate out of our headquarters in Melbourne, but more recently, we have a commercial hub and a clinical hub in Rochester, Minnesota, in association and in partnership with the Mayo Clinic there as our clinical partner. Our main product is based on a digital microscopy at point of care, where we can provide subcellular resolution imaging at point of contact with no slides, no tissue processing, and no delays. And of course, we believe that our technology fits seamlessly into the diagnostic and surgical workflows commonly found in clinical applications, whether they be in surgery, pathology, or veterinary medicine. Our market cap is 120 million, and we have a large shareholder following in Australia. Our main point of differentiation in the digital pathology space is point of care digital microscopy, which is an evolving and ever-changing field, and we believe this is the future of medicine. We see a world where pathology is real-time, is digital, and is at point of care, compared to what we currently have, which is an analog system, which is slow, reactive, and very definitely delayed. We see a world where doctors can diagnose conditions on the spot with our technology, with our physical biopsies, where surgeons can treat cancers completely, the first time, every time, because they can assess cancer tissue margins, and where pathologists can see cells live during an operation, not days afterwards when they're looking at their glass slides. And of course, that means that we can generate results in seconds or minutes, not days or weeks, which is the current status quo with laborious laboratory procedures. So we're on a journey moving through a transformation from being an original equipment manufacturer to being a private label medical technology company. And we've been working for the last several years on making significant changes in our organizational readiness, both the structure, the leadership, and the scale to manufacture. Our technology readiness, we've now unveiled multiple hardware and software offerings that we'll intend to bring to market following regulatory clearance. In establishing significant clinical and commercial partnerships and collaborations across the globe in preparation for market entry. And of course, in clinical validation, in preparation of regulatory submission and clearance. When we set out on this journey, we talked about a vision of multiple clinical devices for different clinical applications, and this would be buttressed by a suite of digital health assets. And these are telepathology, AI-based diagnostics, flexible endomicroscopy through the biopsy working channel of commercially available scopes, robotic integration, and then ultimately image-guided molecular surgery. So today I'll update you on our progress to date with these items. We now have a suite of hardware offerings in the life sciences, in veterinary medicine, in dental care, in surgery, and also in pathology. We are pursuing our surgical and pathology offerings in the first instance with regulatory clearance for human healthcare and our veterinary product for veterinary medicine. So we've realized the hardware offerings over the last 3 years in product development, research, changes to the operating systems, and changes basically to both hardware and software. In the telepathology space, we've created our own telepathology offering, which is live streaming of our images anywhere across the world in real time. Distinct geographies, time zones, and locations are now a thing of the past with our offering in telepathology. We've brought a minimal viable product forward and will be deploying this product on our clinical devices in early 26 for further clinical testing before regulatory submission. In addition, we are progressing 3 AI-assisted solutions for oral tissue imaging, breast tissue imaging, and GI tissue imaging. And these are the 3 clinical areas that we're spending most of our time accumulating data and also deploying our devices. We continue to develop the next generation of flexible endomicroscopy, and these are some concept designs around the Gen 3 device. The GI market remains a significant area of interest for us, a very large market size, and an area that we've demonstrated significant penetration in the past with our device with Pentax. The point of difference here is that we'll have an open system which is independent of the endoscope manufacturers, so that way we can tap into the broader 100% of the market instead of being tied to one particular scope manufacturer in a closed system. We continue to develop the robotic integration with our collaboration with the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, and now moving that also to collaborations at the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida. In the first instance, looking at applications in breast cancer surgery, and then opening that up to other robotic surgical procedures in due course. We are working on our hardware integration in addition to our software integration to maximize visualization for robotic-assisted surgery, and that work is on track. Importantly, to summarize these developments from a product pipeline point of view, we are expecting to submit a FDA application for clearance of our veterinary product in 2026 followed soon thereafter for our surgical device, InView, and our pathology device, Inform, also in 2026. And obviously with launch of those two clinical human imaging products in 2027. We continue to work on the specific requirements around our dental imaging hardware and contrast agent requirements previously provided to us by the FDA, and that will continue well into 2027. And as I've alluded to, our third generation flexible GI scope is still in preclinical testing mode, and that will come online in the next couple of years. To buttress those hardware offerings will be then supported by the software integration with telepathology, robotics, and AI. All of our devices are built with those software integrations in mind, so those will be seamless after the hardware is FDA cleared. We are on a journey to realize commercial opportunities within oral imaging, GI imaging, surgical applications in robotics. And in the first instance, the surgical applications will be in open surgery for both breast and head and neck, then followed by applications in laparoscopic surgery, and then ultimately with robotic surgery as that field continues to expand and to grow. So significant market opportunity in front of us in multiple areas. So just a closing comment in relation to the defining opportunity that is Optiscan imaging. We have a validated product with multiple years and multiple partners, particularly currently Carl Zeiss and the Mayo Clinic. We have a truly revolutionary technology, which one platform offering multiple applications in clinical care and multiple opportunities for growth in the market. We are at an inflection point, moving away from product development to market entry and commercialization, and we see Optiscan's imaging technology in pathology in a similar way that CT and MR transformed radiology. We believe Optiscan imaging and its technology is truly medicine's next great leap moving forward. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time and happy to take any of your questions at this email. Thank you very much for joining us today at TSN Gems.
Hello, I'm Paul Rennie, Managing Director of Paradigm Biopharmaceuticals. Thank you to the TSN for providing the opportunity to update investors about Paradigm Biopharmaceuticals. Our ticker is PAR, and I'll go to the next slide, please. Next slide is our standard disclaimer, and I'll leave that for everyone to review in their own time. Now, the subject of today's presentation is going to be in relation to the clinical indication of osteoarthritis. And I think many people will either have some osteoarthritis or they will know somebody within their family with osteoarthritis. It's a very common indication affecting somewhere between 10 and 15% of the general population. We do know that those percentages do increase in the latter years of life. And one of the common myths about osteoarthritis, which has been dispelled by modern science, is that it's simply wear and tear. So some people think they get osteoarthritis because they're simply getting old and everything is wearing down, and the same occurs to their joints. Well, what we now know with modern science is that osteoarthritis is not wear and tear, but it is an active degenerative disease. So the whole joint is actively degenerating, so that we see that the tissues of the joint, which includes the bone under the cartilage or the subchondral bone, the synovial capsule, which contains the fluid around the joint, also the menisci in the knee joint, other ligaments and tendons, are all actively breaking down and leading to joint instability. But the hallmark of osteoarthritis has been for a long time the breakdown of cartilage. So a lot of people say they have, wear and tear, and it's bone on bone, which indicates that the joint has degenerated to a point where the cartilage has eroded, and now basically the bones are no longer separated by that cartilage, and therefore the disease has well progressed. So on the right-hand panel here, we see 4 radiographs indicating the stages of osteoarthritis as so nicely summarized by Doctors Kelgren and Lawrence. As you can see, top left radiograph is grade 1 or very minor osteoarthritis, grade 2 to its right, and below grade 2 on the left is grade 3 osteoarthritis, starting to see some real changes in the bone shape. And then grade 4, you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, and particularly on the right-hand side of that image, you can see that the gap between the bones is non-existent and the bones are in fact touching, indicating that there is no cartilage left between those 2 bones, and that becomes a painful condition leading to malformation of the joint, leading to functional issues in relation to the performance of the joint, its ability to flex, and also leading to significant pain. So that is end-stage disease, and grade 3 and grade 4 are generally considered moderate to severe osteoarthritis. Now, as I mentioned, it is a disease process that we do know that there are certain biochemicals that lead to the breakdown of the extracellular matrix, the cartilage, and those chemicals are upregulated in the presence of inflammatory cytokines. And we know that the disease pathways, there are many of them, but they ultimately lead to the destruction of all of the tissues that hold together a healthy joint and separate the bones, making it a pain-free motion. So one of the things that's very important about osteoarthritis is that many people believe it's an old person's disease, but we now see that there are younger and younger people getting osteoarthritis associated with many of the interventions that occur during some sporting injuries and trauma that is afflicted on the joint in the younger years. And it's no longer just a person getting to 70, 80 years of age and having problems with their mobility. Younger people, certainly in their 40s and 50s, can also get this debilitating disease. And while it's not necessarily life-threatening, it does lead to a lot of complications in a person's life. For example, there are many health issues associated with osteoarthritis. They can include sleep disturbance, which we know is very important. We also know that there's social withdrawal with people with osteoarthritis. They withdraw from some of the activities that they generally would like to do with their friends and family, such as playing golf, hiking, walking the dog, and other activities which they withdraw from because of the pain and the discomfort of osteoarthritis. And we do know that social withdrawal is one of the hallmarks of risk factors associated with Alzheimer's disease. So it's very important that we understand that this disease, while not necessarily life-threatening, it is very debilitating and it does change a person's life. And people are looking, obviously, for ways of being able to stop the degeneration, try and see some regeneration, and get back to a pain-free lifestyle, which enables them, even in their latter years, to be able to enjoy some of the activities that they may have had to forego because of the pain and discomfort of osteoarthritis. We know that there's many risk factors associated with osteoarthritis. It is a multifactorial disease, and they can include a person's age, their gender, their BMI or obesity levels. We also know previous joint injury or overuse of the joint, metabolic disease, and genetics all are predisposing or potentially predisposing somebody to osteoarthritis later in life. The common therapies which are very important include continuing to exercise even though the joint is degrading. Weight management becomes very important, and physical therapy, as well as some bracing for extra support. Some of the go-to medications for people with osteoarthritis, particularly in the early stages of the disease, are NSAIDs and analgesics. As the disease progresses, those medications are generally replaced with more potent analgesics such as opioids for pain control. And that in itself introduces a series of issues that we know in relation to the opioids and their use in chronic pain, leading to dependency on the pharmaceutical product. And in the end stage and extreme cases, obviously joint replacement surgery is available for those people, but many people shy at the joint replacement surgery because of the cost in some cases, also in some cases the conception that they may be limited in their activities based on having joint replacements, etc., etc. So it is a disease which progresses over time. It is a disease for where there are very few therapeutic options for people in the later stages of the disease that are really safe and effective. And we want to try and develop a product that not only addresses the main symptoms of pain and joint stiffness, but also potentially slow that biochemistry from a degenerative state to a more regenerative state. So we want to shut down those enzymes that are breaking down the cartilage and preserve as much cartilage as possible. Also reduce the inflammation, increase the blood flow to the joint, and then hopefully encourage some form of regeneration. And that's really what Paradigm's mission is here, is to find a long-term solution for people with osteoarthritis and not just focus on short-term pain control. Next slide, please. So in terms of the market size, it is huge. We know that roughly 550 million people worldwide have osteoarthritis. We also know that there's approximately 70% of that 550 million people who have knee osteoarthritis. So around 70% of the total population has knee, which is why it's the most prevalent and most regularly studied joint. It's the largest weight-bearing joint of the body. And when we take those people with knee osteoarthritis, we discount that further to identify what is the addressable market, which is the moderate to severe osteoarthritis, which is around 65% of that 365 million. So roughly, I'm talking rough numbers, 250 million people with moderate to severe osteoarthritis. Now, what that means is that there's a very large market, 250 million people, and it also means that there's approximately 300 million people with osteoarthritis that have not got to that stage yet. So the market coming down the timeline means that there will be more and more people added to that moderate to severe cohort. And of course, there'll be more and more people diagnosed over the years with minor and mild osteoarthritis, for which there are limited therapies as well. What we know from some market surveys that scientists have conducted is that roughly 81% of people are largely dissatisfied with their current medications. So we can explain that in a few slides' time, but we'll go to the next slide, please. So just summarizing, osteoarthritis, and from an investor's point of view, I think it's always important that you understand that there is a real, genuine, unmet medical need in the marketplace. We're not talking about, replacing other therapies or changing the treatment paradigm. What we are talking about is that there's a large unmet medical need for which many doctors and patients realize that the drugs that are currently being prescribed are not doing anything substantial for the patient and their condition. We know that there's limited therapeutic options. We know that the NSAIDs, steroids, hyaluronic acid, all of those drugs have been around for some time, and they focus on short-term pain relief. We also know from the healthcare system there's a huge economic burden to treatment of osteoarthritis. Direct healthcare costs are estimated to be $136 billion annually for the United States alone. So a massive amount of time, effort, and money is required to treat people with osteoarthritis through the healthcare system. And we also know from surveys that there is a very strong demand, both from the doctors prescribing drugs and also patients receiving those drugs, for a safe and effective treatment with long-term benefits, not short-term taking medications every day, but actually being able to take a drug or be administered the drug and then have long-term effects for the patient. So they're not having to, as I said earlier, not take drugs every day, but to be able to receive the drugs and then have that effect last for 6 to 12 months, maybe even longer. Next slide, please. This is to explain how there's such a large unmet medical need. If we consider these horizontal bars starting on the left-hand side, all green, and then we see them moving across if we consider the bottom axis, you'll see the grades of osteoarthritis are listed across the bottom, starting on the left at minor, moving right, mild, moderate, and severe osteoarthritis. And if we look up between the gap between moderate and severe osteoarthritis, we'll see all of those horizontal bars have now turned to red, which means those drugs which are listed on the far right-hand side are no longer effective with people with moderate to severe osteoarthritis. So that's a huge unmet medical need. We know that these patients and doctors do not believe that those agents are generally effective in that moderate to severe stage of the disease. So we are focusing our drug on the treatment of moderate to severe osteoarthritis, for which there is this large unmet medical need. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, we have around about 250 million patients currently worldwide with moderate to severe osteoarthritis. So that's the addressable target market. But we also know following that, behind that is somewhere in the region of 300 plus million people who have mild to minor osteoarthritis, and they're coming down the pipeline as well. So we're developing a dual PPS-based or pentazan-based therapy, transforming osteoarthritis management across the full spectrum of the disease. So treating patients with minor, mild, moderate to severe osteoarthritis is our goal. And we aim to shift the treatment to earlier to reduce opioid reliance and also improve long-term outcomes. By improving long-term outcomes, I'm trying to say there that we're not just talking about pain relief, we're talking about stopping the degeneration, hopefully, and moving to more of a regeneration therapy. So with regards to opioid reliance, we know that the US FDA recently put out guidance in September of this year. The US FDA said that they are looking to actively look for ways of reducing the reliance on opioids for chronic pain treatment. So we know that there's still an opioid crisis in the United States. So while I think the peak came in 2023, there was a slight reduction in 2024, but that slight reduction has been overshadowed by an increase in 2025. So the opioid epidemic continues in the United States, and the US FDA is looking for companies like Paradigm, for example, to bring these therapies that are non-opioid based forward and see if we can get those to the market sooner with a number of initiatives which they've outlined. And also the other thing that's important is that the FDA, as well as other regulatory agencies, are very much focused on non-opioid based pain solutions. So in the absence of any real pain control for these patients, doctors are sometimes, unfortunately, in a situation of having so few options that they prescribe opioids. And we know that that has a long-term detrimental effect on the patients and the outcome of their osteoarthritis. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of what Paradigm looks like going forward. We believe that we have a xylitol, which is the bottom horizontal bar, starting at mild, moving to moderate to severe osteoarthritis, is well studied in 3 phase 2 studies, and that is the central piece to our pivotal phase 3 program. Xylitol is an injectable version of the drug PPS, which is a subcutaneous injection just under the skin around the abdomen. Very similar injection process to many of the weight loss drugs that are on the market at the moment. So just a small needle placed against the skin and injected into the patient. As I mentioned, that's representing around 250 million people, 250 million people addressable with that product right now, but we have to get through the phase 3 study. But also coming on the back of that is a very large market of minor to mild osteoarthritis. And this is where we have an oral PPS in combination with a COX-2 inhibitor, such as Celebrex or meloxicam. And we know that they are very effective when they're combined together. This comes from the work of Professor Peter Ghosh, who studied the combination of PPS and a COX-2 inhibitor and found that those products, when combined, are far more effective than the COX-2 alone. So many people with minor osteoarthritis probably feel that their meloxicam or their Celebrex is highly effective, but as the disease progresses, it becomes less effective. So what we're hoping to do is capture a lot of that early stage osteoarthritis with this new combination product, which is in early stages of development. It's not our primary focus. Our primary focus is on the pivotal phase 3 injectable version of PPS for our moderate to severe patients. But we do have a pipeline that's being developed through this combination oral product. Next slide, please. Now, just take listeners through a little bit about our phase 3 program. We do have a study design that has been approved by the US FDA and harmonized with other regulatory authorities like the European EMA. It's 466 patients randomized 1-to-1. So 233 patients getting PPS, 233 patients receiving saline as placebo. We're investigating injectable pentazan polysulfate sodium for moderate to severe osteoarthritis knee OA. The dosing regimen, 2 milligrams per kilogram twice weekly, which is the dose that we've studied in 2 of our phase 2 studies. It's shown to be effective and also safe. The primary endpoint will be change in average daily pain at day 112 from the last injection of pentazan. So there are 2 milligrams per kilogram twice weekly. So there's 2 injections a week for 6 weeks. No further drug is administered. And then at day 112 from that last administration of the drug, we are looking at the daily average pain out to day 112, and we have key secondary endpoints which include WOMAC pain and function, patient global impression of change, and imaging biomarkers, MRI and X-ray. The trial oversight is being conducted through Advanced Clinical, which is a US-based CRO, and also we recently engaged a Danish CRO to help us with the oversight of the trial in Moldova, which is a Commonwealth independent state of Eastern Europe, and has very high recruitment rates in osteoarthritis. And they also have an accelerated regulatory pathway. So we are investigating that through this phase 3 study, and also in Hong Kong, which also has an accelerated approval process. So we're looking at ethnic diversity by bringing in those additional countries. Interim analysis, this is big key for investors to understand that mid-2026, we will have 50% of our subjects reach day 112, and that will then provide us with the interim analysis, which will be, or the independent data safety monitoring board will review the drug effect size of the treatment group versus the placebo group. And if the drug effect size is a certain level, we will continue on with the study, and we know the probability of success will be very high to receive a statistical outcome at that drug effect size when we complete the study. So that's very important information for investors. It's getting an indication that if we continue on with the study, it has met those thresholds of not being futile, and it also means that we'll continue on with the study to get the numbers, to get the statistical significance. Next slide, please. Lead program is osteoarthritis. We have a pivotal phase 3 in progress. We currently have hundreds of people in screening. We are treating patients in the United States and in Australia. We expect that we'll be screening and recruiting our first subjects in Hong Kong and in Moldova mid-January. So we will have lots and lots of people going through the trial to get us to the interim analysis by June. Next slide, please. So investment highlights. First thing I'd like to say to investors is this is a true unmet medical need. I think if anyone was to speak to a doctor and a patient who has moderate to severe osteoarthritis, you would understand that there are lots of complications with this disease, but also very few therapeutic options. And I think that's what makes this very attractive from an investment perspective. Also, we have de-risked the program in that we have 3 phase 2 studies conducted, and we have shown very consistent results of the drug in people with moderate to severe osteoarthritis. We've always studied moderate to severe osteoarthritis. In addition to that, we have real-world evidence on 800 subjects in Australia who've been treated by their practicing physician who has run out of therapeutic options, applied to the Therapeutic Goods Administration, got approval from the TGA, and has treated patients with this drug, and it's deemed to be highly effective in most cases. We have got an optimized phase 3 trial design, so the FDA has signed off on the design, so we're not in the situation where the FDA might say at the end of the study, we'd like to see this or we'd like to see that, because all of that discussion occurred in 2024. We're now executing on a program that has been pre-approved by the FDA. Pivotal phase 3 trial has started, and as I mentioned, hundreds of subjects in screening. Lots of patients are being dosed right now in the US and Australia. The program previously received fast-track designation, which helps us accelerate through the regulatory process, and particularly given the FDA guidance around non-opioid treatments for chronic pain, that's very important. There's a very large unmet medical need. As I mentioned, total population 500 million, but 250 million roughly affected with moderate to severe osteoarthritis, and 81% of patients across the entire OA spectrum are largely dissatisfied with their current treatments. And we have a near-term inflection point, which we think will be a major catalyst for commercial interest in our program to get very serious after the interim data is understood and presented to those commercial companies. So we think that there'll be some significant commercial deals around the middle of 2026. Next slide, please. And if there's any further questions from anyone, there's the contact details for my colleague Simon White, who's the Director of Investor Relations, and myself, and people can email us with any questions at any time. So again, thank you to the TSN network for the opportunity to present. Thank you to all the investors who've tuned in, and I'd like to wish everyone happy holidays for the coming season. Thank you very much.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here today to tell you about Proteomics International Laboratories Limited and our journey in precision diagnostics and the commercial launch that is currently underway with our products. Standard disclaimer on forward-looking statements. Now, Proteomics International, we have a number of key highlights. The messages for today are we have 4 first-in-class diagnostic tests that we're launching on 2 continents in this financial year, and I'll tell you about those tests in a second. The key point is that these tests address substantial markets with significant unmet medical needs, and the tests have been validated in large clinical studies, and each of the tests has significant advantage over current standard of care. The products have been developed, they're patented, and they've got highly attractive margins. We're taking the tests to market through a consumer-driven strategy where we're engaging with primary care physicians and general practitioners. We have a digital platform that we've built, and that allows us to sell our tests direct to patients and engage with these physicians and we have proven demand from our key opinion leaders and specialists who are on board. It's also important to note that we're funded to execute these launch strategies, and the real target is the strategic positioning to secure licensing agreements for each of the tests. What is the problem and the solution that we're seeking to provide? We're targeting major diseases, as I said, where the actual problem is significant and the current tests for diagnosing it are not sufficient. So Promarker D, this is for diabetic kidney disease. If you've got diabetic kidney disease, then you're going to end up on dialysis or kidney transplant. All patients with type 2 diabetes are at risk of diabetic kidney disease, and currently 1 in 2 will develop kidney disease in their lifetime. We have a predictive test that can identify these patients up to 3 or 4 years in advance, and this test has been launched in Australia and the USA and is in its ramp-up phase. We have a test for endometriosis called Promarker Endo. This is a first-in-class blood test that can identify patients who would otherwise have a laparoscopy. The current diagnosis can take several years because of that invasive surgery, and this test is about to launch in Australia, and then the USA will follow. Our third product is for esophageal cancer. This is a novel accurate blood test for this nasty cancer, commonly caused by acid reflux. And again, only a surgical procedure is used currently to detect this disease, and our blood test can pick it up in its early stages. We've recently launched this test in Australia, and the USA is pending. The fourth, and by no means least, is a test for oxidative stress. This is a slightly different area where we're looking at performance athletes, be they humans or horses. And our test has shown that we can pick up oxidative stress, which is muscle damage that occurs at a molecular level long before the actual injuries take place. And this is an exciting product in its own right, and launch in Australia is pending. What we're seeking is near-term opportunities, maximum optionality for strategic partnering. If you consider where we're at in this journey, in terms of focusing on market awareness and the launch of the tests, we've developed a suite of highly accurate tests for markets with a large unmet need. We have a platform technology in place. This enables tech transfer to our partners. We have a laboratory that's certified for providing clinical testing in Australia. We have a laboratory established in California for providing clinical testing there. So we have provided the fastest pathway to achieving product launch and revenues through those laboratories. We also have reimbursement pricing in place for our Promarker D test, and the other tests will follow. We understand this pathway well. We're demonstrating market need and in that phase of ramp up. So we're engaging with those primary care physicians and GPs. We're building market awareness. We have an attractive digital platform that we've built and that is available. This is all with a view to growing sales, raising awareness, and building those strategic partnerships. So the objective for us is that dialogue and that the ability to engage with strategic partners so that we can either sell the tests ourselves through our digital platform or engage and license the tests on a non-exclusive basis and retain use of the platform, or license the tests exclusively. So maximum optionality. If we look at the milestones, we've got multiple value drivers already achieved and ahead. In the recent months, towards the end of last financial year and into this, we've established our Australian clinical lab, we've established our US clinical lab, we've launched Promarker D in Western Australia initially and now nationwide. We've launched Promarker D into the US. We've launched ESO into into Australia with the US to follow. So the near-term targets are the launch of the endometriosis test, which is very exciting for that community of patients who have been underserved by the current healthcare system. We're looking forward to ramping up sales of Promarker D through this financial year and through the years ahead, and the opportunity for licensing deals for each of our tests. Clinically, we've published a large number of manuscripts and papers in peer-reviewed journals showing our tests do what we say they do. They're first-in-class diagnostic tests. We have a deep pipeline of other tests that we will develop in due course. We're focusing on the sales of those existing ones. We have a reimbursement code for ProMarker D. We have US Medicare pricing set for ProMarker D, and we'll follow the same path with our others. So each of those objectives to come are important milestones for the test. A quick snapshot of our company. It's still a tightly held organization. We're fully funded for what I've been talking about in terms of executing those launch strategies. We have a lean burn rate for a company of our size and with a number of products that are actually in market or about to go into market. So it's a very exciting time. So the investment summary, we're commercializing 4 first-in-class blood tests for major diseases and conditions with significant unmet need. We're in that ramp-up phase for our diabetic kidney disease, ProMarker D, the esophageal cancer test, ProMarker ESO. First sales already achieved. We've got a commercial platform developed that can drive awareness of each of those tests. So that's our digital platform that we established in Australia and now moved into the US. This is about attracting strategic partners. We've got a proprietary platform technology that underpins everything we do, and that lets us develop further tests. We have the funding, we have the team, we have the infrastructure and certifications in place to do everything I've been talking about. So we have a very rich financial year ahead in terms of the number of catalysts. And as I said, we're excited about where we're at, and we look forward to more people joining us on our journey. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining. My name is Riccardo Canevari. I'm the CEO of Radiopharm Theranostics. Radiopharm Theranostics is a company with a core business in radiopharmaceutical. We are a clinical stage company, and we are advancing 5 molecules that represent our priorities. We do also have strategic partnership from a corporate point of view with a very important key player in the radiopharmaceutical field, that is Lantheus Imaging, and a very important strategic partnership with MD Anderson Cancer Center. We recently raised capital last month, so now we are fully funded into Q1 2027. We are very proud of our pipeline. We are now 5 molecules in clinical stage. Due to the interest of time, I will focus on the top 3. The first product is an imaging agent with patient with brain metastasis. This is our most advanced technology. It is in phase 2B, and we are half of the way. We have, in fact, communicated to the market that we have already dosed 15 patients out of 30. The second product, RAD204, is a therapeutic radiopharmaceutical. It is for patients with multiple types of solid tumor, and we are targeting the PD-L1 expression. This trial is well underway. We have already completed the first 2 dose levels, and now we are recruiting patients in the 3rd dose level. And our third molecule, RAD22, is for patients with HER2 tumors, mainly breast cancer. And also this trial is going well from an execution point of view. We have completed the first dose level, and now we are dosing the second dose level. So the top 3 programs are really progressing well, and we are pleased that we are now ready to start the additional 2 programs at the bottom, 2 very important and highly differentiating molecules, again, for patients with multiple solid tumors. But let me go a little bit more in detail about our key asset, RAD101. We completed phase 1 and phase 2A, and now we are half the way of phase 2B. It's a very large patient population. It's about 300,000 new patients only in US every year are diagnosed with brain metastasis. And from a competitive point of view, we are in a very good position. In fact, there is no identified competitor that is in clinical stage. So we have a number of years of advantage versus any potential competitors. We have recently released the first 3 patient data. Was very positive to see that all the 3 patients have shown tumor uptake, concordance with MRI that is in line with the primary endpoint of the study. So there is a significant unmet medical need for patients with brain metastasis, and we believe that RAD101 has the possibility and the opportunity to better identify brain metastasis in addition to MRI. So a very important tool in the hand of physician for a very delicate tumor type. The next step are progressing in line with the expectation. We plan to release our first large interim analysis of about 11 patients out of 30, and this will happen in the next few weeks. And we plan to complete the trial by March. As a key agent in our pipeline, we are already planning for the phase 3 pivotal trial. So we are excited, and also we see a lot of interest externally. We asked for an independent agency to do an assessment, and the value of this agent north of $500 million yearly sales. So we think that is a high potential asset, and the trial are progressing extremely well. So we are very excited. Just a minute about the other 2 clinical trials. These are therapeutic. So RAD204 is for patients with multiple solid tumor. We are increasing the dose as a typical dose escalating trial. The first dose level at 30 and 60 millicurie has been completed, and now we are dosing at 90 millicurie. The first 2 dose levels show no significant side effects, so the product is very well tolerated. And now we believe that with this dose level, the 90 millicurie and above, we have a higher probability to see important clinical response. So trial is progressing well, and we are collecting clinical data. And I like to close with our third molecule that is advanced in clinical stage. We are in phase 1. We have already completed the dose level 1 at 30 millicurie, and we are dosing the patient at 75. Also here, we have interesting preliminary results because we saw very safe profile with an extremely positive tolerability for patient, but also we see a very strong tumor uptake. So again, the team is focused on execution, in particular on those 3 trials. We believe that the next 3, 6, and 9 months, we will have the opportunity to inform the market with multiple data points, and we continue to be very excited about the future of radiopharm diagnostics. And thank you for your attention.
It's a pleasure to be here today to provide an update to you on Star Pharma and a reflection of the achievements of 2025 and what we are looking forward to in 2026. This is our forward-looking statement disclaimer. There's a full statement on our website if you need to refer to that also. But just a reminder to those who are familiar somewhat with Star Pharma and those that do not know Star Pharma is at the cutting edge of drug delivery, and we have a validated dendrimer technology that provides benefit to drug development and drug delivery, that provides patient benefit, and through that we are able to develop our own assets, but also engage in strategic partnerships for those companies that want to license our technology. We have global commercial reach, and we have a world-class team to delivering breakthrough health solutions. The heart of Star Pharma is this dendrimer technology that I referred to. Excuse me. And this technology is clinically validated. Over 350 patients have had the benefit of having our dendrimer technology combined with a drug that shows what that combination can bring versus what a drug alone would provide. We have a number of commercial opportunities because we are a platform technology, and they can come through those partnerships that I mentioned, but also for our own asset development. The technology itself can be used quite broadly, different therapeutic areas, different drug types, different modalities, and I'll explain that in a moment as to how that can be achieved. And the other thing that really does make Star Pharma unique is that we've been around for over 2 decades, and we have a deeply experienced team in discovery and drug development and the application of our dendrimer technology. We have used it extensively in our own asset development and with partners, and that experience really does separate us from a number of other companies, and particularly in the space of dendrimer application. With that work that has already been done, we also have a very strong IP position. When I talk about the technology, I'm referring to the dendrimer technology that is in a very basic form, concentric layers of lysine. So it's a circular structure that has branches on the outside that allows in drug development to decorate the dendrimer in different ways to achieve different outcomes. As you can see by the picture on the left, that through those attachment points, you can add different elements to it, be it a drug payload, and that could be different types of drugs, could be cytotoxics, radioisotope, immunomodulators, different targeting modalities, different linkers, and all of those changes lead to a different outcome from a biodistribution or a pharmacokinetic perspective. And that's really important because in drug development, it's often for those reasons, efficacy, toxicity, and pharmacokinetics, as to why drugs are not successful. And our dendrimer technology, in combining in that drug development phase, can really help to address some of the challenges that many companies are facing. On the right-hand side that you can see, that we have generation 2 up to generation 5, and what that means is that as the layers are added, you get a larger structure and you also have more attachment points. And that becomes important also for the outcome that you want to achieve in your drug development. So having more attachments or a larger size will actually lead to a different way in which the drug is distributed in the body, the way in which it could be released, where it will be targeted, and that's the flexibility that our technology can bring. And that's what our partners, certainly that we're working with or have worked with us, is the benefit that they can see is that flexibility, but the precise nature in which our technology can be integrated into that drug development process. This graphic is to show that for Star Pharma, there is that application that provides opportunity for us as a company internally for our asset development and partnerships, and also for the products that we have on market that provide revenue opportunity. So on the left-hand side, it shows our pipeline. We have 3 phase 2 assets. 2 of them are the priority for us to license at the moment, and we are actively pursuing partners to license those 2 assets in the oncology space. There's been impressive phase 1-2 data that shows the benefit that combining our dendrimer technology with an existing chemotherapy drug will bring to improve efficacy and certainly reduce a lot of the side effects that patients typically experience from chemotherapy. Then reading further down, we've got a radiotheranostic program being a diagnostic and a therapeutic. We are progressing those and aiming to get into clinic in 2026. We're excited by the data that we're seeing there, and we know that the space of radiopharmaceuticals is of high interest for patient benefit, particularly for those in very high patients with high unmet need, and also from an investment standpoint. We also have a number of projects ongoing where we are using our technology in different modalities, different therapeutic areas, and we're hoping that they will convert to preclinical in 2026 also. On the right-hand side, you'll see that we have partner programs, and I'll talk to those a little bit more in a moment. And then the over-the-counter products that we have, which are on market, registered in over 35 countries. That's Vivagel and Viralise. And these products for us are important to provide a revenue stream for us. They're distributed mostly through other partners or marketed by us through digital platform in Europe and UK. The partnerships that I referred to are ones that we have announced in the last 18 months and are a demonstration of those commercial opportunities that I mentioned before. They're significant because they show that the technology, for those that have experienced it and used it, is validated in that they are prepared to take this forward into their development program. So Genentech, we have worked with for a couple of years prior to signing this licensing agreement. It's a limited number of targets, deal value of $860 million, and that's plus royalties. But that's an example for us of the way in which we intend to bring value to Star Pharma and indeed shareholders is through these types of programs where our partners can license the technology. The important thing to note about each of these partnerships is that they are limited in their focus, so it doesn't exclude us from creating other opportunities in different areas with partners using our technology. All of these three have been announced in the last 18 months, and we have an intense effort around continuing to engage and strengthen our strategic partnerships as we exemplify how our technology can be used in different areas. So just wrapping up the update for Star Pharma of where we are today, in that we have phase 2 assets that we're looking to license. We have strategic partnerships that we are really focused on delivering our level of commitment and to achieve the milestones within those programs. And as we look forward, we're focusing on making sure that we bring our radio program into the clinic in 2026. As I mentioned before, we're really excited about the data that we're seeing in that space. We're looking to expand our partnerships either within our existing or with new, and certainly in the radio space. There's a number of parties interested in that, so we will continue to expand our strategic partnerships and convert those really early discovery priority projects into a development program. For those products that we have on market, we continue to increase the revenue that we generate from that. We understand more from the last 12 months of work around what are the levers that drive that outcome of increasing the revenue. So we'll intensify some efforts around that, which obviously improves our long-term sustainability by our revenue generation from those products that exist today. We're excited about 2026 and where we are today and the platform that we can build on to really bring these significant opportunities to life for patients, but also for our shareholders or potential investors. Thank you very much.
There are a lot of reasons to be excited about biotech and medtech companies on the ASX. Just last month, Eli Lilly became the first healthcare company to reach $1 trillion. The Nasdaq Biotech Index is the highest performing index over the last 6 months, up 36%. And as we head into 2026, I'm joined by analyst Jason Siegel, who has been an analyst at Next Investors for the last 6 years, covering the healthcare sector and also small cap investments, and has just started his own daily newsletter covering the life sciences industry called the Armchair Analyst. I'm thrilled today to ask Jason some questions about where the healthcare sector has been and is headed in the year ahead. Jason, welcome to the Stock Network.
Thanks, Lil. Great to be here.
Now, how would you evaluate the life sciences industry in the year we've just had?
Yeah, look, it's been an interesting year, bit of an up and down year. I think that the first half of the year was a little bit rough for the life sciences industry. If you look overseas, I think that a lot of the confusion and challenges came around the tariffs and the most favored nation pricing for big pharma. So a lot of investors were relatively skittish about taking the plunge and making investment in life sciences stocks. Just that first half of 2025 was quite a big challenge. But really, sort of since June, we've seen a really big uplift in the industry. And I think that the biotech, the NASDAQ biotech index is up sort of 36% in the last 6 months and is one of the best performing indexes across all sectors in the US. What we've seen is Eli Lilly become the first $1 trillion market cap life sciences company. In the last couple of weeks, we've seen not a couple of weeks, but last sort of month, we've seen the multiple like $10 billion plus mergers and acquisitions. Probably the most famous one was when Pfizer bought Metsera for $10.5 billion. That was for a weight loss program, and there was a bidding war between them and Novo Nordisk. Merck acquired Cidara for $9.2 billion, and even in the medtech space, Abbott's had a big $21 billion acquisition of Exact Science. And so there's been a lot of this M&A activity sort of in the second half of the year, and I think that that's reflected in sort of the rising tide lifts all boats. So we've seen a lot of the Australian companies on the ASX perform quite well in that sort of second half. 4DX has had a very good year, Star Pharma, Blink Labs. And what we're starting to see as well is that investors are returning to the life sciences companies, particularly as they look to speculate on outcomes of clinical trials that might be coming up. So Actinogen has had a very, very good last few months. And Island Pharmaceuticals has also performed really well as people look to speculate on them being able to fast track their drug development through the animal rule pathway, which is a bit of an interesting one. Look, the Australian markets haven't been without their challenges. There was a couple of IPOs early in December that really didn't perform so well. They've recovered a little bit now, but that was a challenge for the industry. And there was a big clinical trial result from Opthia that just didn't go their way, and sort of that highlighted the challenges and risks of what happens when clinical trials don't always run your way. But what we've seen is, like, even though there are those risks, the rewards can be big. And a couple of the larger cap companies that have already had clinical trial results have kicked on. So Neuron's had a really good year, even though it was capped at a billion plus just at the start of the year. They've kicked on and sort of up 54% for the year. Mesoblast also had a very, very good 12 months. Sort of trying to get they're just starting to get their drugs into the commercialization stage. So little bit of a mixed bag, but definitely the second half of the year and going into 2026, we're seeing some really good activity.
And looking more at 2026, what do you think investors can expect from the biotech and medtech industries in the year ahead?
Yeah, another really good question. I think that the M&A activity that we've seen in the last few months is going to continue. There's this big pharma has this big challenge. Every year there's about $176 billion worth of annual revenue that is going to come off exclusivity and going to be competing against generics, which it's called the patent cliff. So big pharma is coming up against this patent cliff, and there's a couple of quite well known and meaningful drugs that will provide a lot of revenue for big pharma companies that they now need to go and through acquisition effectively rebuild that pipeline of revenue. So I was listening to a podcast the other week, and they were talking about the Jefferies conference in London and how Pfizer was talking about the acquisition that they did. And even though they spent, $10.5 billion on Metsera, there's still, $5 to $10 billion worth of firepower sitting on the sidelines, ready to acquire late stage assets. And I think, again, once the late stage assets are acquired and there's the investors can see that exit potential for mid to larger cap biotech companies, all the small ones sort of shuffle up as well. So I think that also in the medtech space, there'll be a lot of focus on AI. We've already seen quite a few of the AI companies on the ASX perform really well in the last 12 months. And there's always new data that comes out. There's a lot of companies that are presenting phase 3 clinical trials and phase 2 clinical trials that I'm looking forward to. Just off the top of my head, like Actinogen's coming up with their some interim results for Alzheimer's. Cynata, who I think speaking today, they've got one phase 2 and one phase 3 clinical trial. Dimeric should have their phase 3 readout. Avecho has a phase 3 readout. A lot of the companies in the oncology space will have continued results that are presented. So there's lots of different exciting things to look forward to, and if as investors, we look for the results. The results are the things that we can't really affect, but they're the ones that either move the share price up or down. So that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Fantastic. And final question, Jason, if we can talk about AI for a second, what can you see as the opportunity here for the healthcare industry?
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this quite a lot in the last, since I started writing the newsletter, and I listened to the CEO of OneView, James, who should be speaking today, and he had a really interesting take. It was effectively that the healthcare industry has the most to gain and the least to lose from using AI. And I think that sits across the board. So at the moment, AI in the healthcare space, medical imaging is the one that's the most obvious, and the one that's been adopted the fastest. And you can see in a couple of companies, 4DX, AYA, that have performed. They're in some of the top performing healthcare companies on the ASX in the last 12 months. These are all in the medical imaging space. We see, I think that AI for personalized care is going to become much more of a bigger player. We've all, searched up our symptoms when we've been sick into ChatGPT. I think that like my wife's second doctor and doctor on call is effectively ChatGPT. So I think that that's going to start to play a role. And if companies can start to think about personalized care and at the tip of their fingertips, I think that's going to be really interesting. There's been some interesting stuff in drug development, AI for drug development, and where I think that there's going to be the most impact is actually AI in clinical trials. So early in December, the FDA announced that they're going to start to use AI in their reviews, some of their reviews process, a lot of administrative tasks. But how far can that be taken? So right now, the double blind placebo-controlled study is the gold standard for measuring and evaluating drugs. But what happens if AI is able to predict with extreme accuracy the results of those trials, or at least support that? Can that, as a function of bringing drugs to market faster, be able to save a lot of capital and help the development pipelines for these life sciences companies? So I think there's a lot of opportunities. So sort of short, like immediate term in the medical imaging space, sort of like a short future in the sort of personalized care and automating some of the stuff around the healthcare system. And then like way off into the future, can AI really predict the outcomes of these clinical trials?
Well, Jason, thank you so much for your insights today, and thrilled to have you joined us on the Stock Network's ASX Gems Healthcare Spotlight.
Great. Thanks, Lil. Appreciate it.